everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, home from the Vikings scrimmage today that they end every training camp with. The last practice is about as hard of a practice as you're going to see between the offense and defense. They move the ball, they go up and down the field, they do some red zone stuff. So we saw a ton of passes from Kyler Murray and some from Carson Wentz. We'll get into why he was the only backup quarterback performing today during this mini scrimmage for the Vikings. But this is our last opportunity to bring out the quarterback grid until put it away for until next year. The last opportunity to analyze everything that Kyler Murray did in this practice. So let's jump into that. Then the McCarthy situation, got thoughts on that, some other notes from the scrimmage and from Kevin O'Connell today. And then the vibe check. I promised you guys the vibe check. So Dane Mizutani and I got together at TCO Performance Center, went through every position. We gave kind of a sentence and the overall vibe of that position. And then after that, I will be here to answer questions, comments, and your guys' overall vibe check. Now the training camp is officially over for the Minnesota Vikings, and it will be until next July that I cover a real practice. We get to see practice, some of it, the warm-ups, to take attendance, but during the season, we don't watch the full practices. So let's jump into Kyler Murray's final impression with us out there. As KOC has said, calling ball and strikes. Although really, for me, it's just sort of writing down what happened and then telling you guys about it. But, one way or the other. So Kyler Murray, in terms of his deep passing in this final practice that was quite intense and really both teams or both sides of the team trying to play hard against each other, had one deep completion. We'll talk about that in a moment when we look at the highlights, and one deep incompletion that was basically just a throwaway when he was pressured. Where Murray was very good today was the intermediate areas, and also had his biggest mistakes today in the intermediate areas. So he had 5 completions in the middle of the field in the intermediate area, which is something that I don't think throughout this training camp he has done that well consistently, as he's still trying to figure out maybe trajectories of the balls, how much touch, the route distances, the timing. But today, a lot of those came together in the middle, completed 5 out of 6 in the middle of the field between 10 and 19 yards, and overall had 7 total completions and 4 incompletions. So 7 for 11 when throwing intermediate. I wonder if that was a little bit of something they wanted to emphasize today. And from the underneath stuff, pretty good. He had 7 completions there and 3 incompletions. So 7 for 10 for the short stuff. And unfortunately, we say goodbye to the beautiful graphics that guided us through the quarterback competition. And let's take a look at the highlights and lowlights from this overall performance from Kyler Murray. In terms of the highlights, overall, he went 15 for 23, 7 positive throws with 6 negative throws today. And the highlights were very high, including one of the best throws that we've seen in training camp from Kyler Murray, a 40-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson. It was where everything just comes together exactly the way it should. Drops back to throw. Jefferson beats his guy. Ball comes up over the top and just drops right into the sky. And it actually reminded me, it's sort of a funny bookend of one of the first passes that we saw from Kyler Murray for the entire offseason, going back to OTAs when we thought he had won the job, all the way back in OTAs on the first day, where he threw a deep ball down the sideline. It was on the other side, but still, where it just seemed like as you're watching the ball fall out of the sky and you're watching the receiver, you're looking back and forth, and it just settles right down, right into Justin Jefferson's hands for a touchdown. So that was a really good way to start out the practice. And then later, he had an outstanding touchdown throw to Jordan Addison where the pressure was coming a little bit. I think the defense did do a good job creating pressure on Kyler today. There were a couple of sacks, and he's kind of backpedaling a little bit off the back foot. He adjusts the arm angle to make the throw and finds Jordan Addison in the back of the end zone, just flying across. He laid the ball out there. Jordan Addison comes flying across, makes a great catch. There were a number of really good timing throws from Kyler Murray today, and I think that that's what you're looking for at the very end of training camp is throws where you drop back, find someone over the middle, let it go at the right time, bang. There was a completion along the sideline to TJ Hawkinson, who I think has really come along in the second half of training camp with Kyler Murray, where it's coming out of his break, Murray lets it go. He kind of breaks right into the football, bang, for a first down. And overall, I think I got this right, because there's a little, sometimes they'll do like a drive in the scrimmage and then, let's do a red zone series, that kind of thing. But I believe that they had 4 total series and scored 2 touchdowns and failed on the other 2. One was on 4th down and the other one was an interception, which we could talk about for the lowlights. One of them was missing Josh Oliver in a wide open pass. It was a great schematic setup where we saw some motion from the fullback, some confusion with who to cover, and he just missed him. That would be one in the game where the entire stadium would groan, but one if they practice enough times that next time they'll get it right with the wide open throw to the tight end. And then there was an interception to end practice that I think was also emblematic that the timing is still a work in progress with a couple of weeks left to go before the season. And when they start putting in a game plan, they're going to practice for 2 weeks those plays that they're going to use against the Green Bay Packers. So if they throw an interception, they're going to work on timing to get that right. So when they do it against the Packers, they are going to have a better chance of nailing it. But it was an example, though, of Kyler Murray still trying to get these things with anticipation. Sometimes comes if you're a quarter of a second off, it's going to turn into a mistake. And that's what happened here, where Murray dropped back to throw and the ball came out just a little bit too early. So Jefferson was just coming out of his break as the ball is arriving. Byron Murphy ends up picking it off. But overall, I would say it was a solid B or B plus day for Kyler Murray. There were a lot of very good throws on time. The offense moved. He hit the deep shot. And I think most importantly, converted a lot of those passes in the middle of the field, but also had some misses there as well. And I think that really defines overall his training camp, where there have been a couple days where he's been nearly perfect, maybe 2 or 3 through the entire time. And most of the time, it's kind of looked like this, where it's a good number of positive throws, probably more negative throws than you would like. And I'll admit that, the negative throw number is always a little harsh on the quarterbacks. If it's a throwaway that would have been a sack, I'm going to put down a negative number. Sometimes in the red zone, it's the right move to throw the ball out of bounds. And I'm sure a coach would say, what are you talking about, negative? But when the result of the play is just throwing it out of the back of the end zone, you can't say, well, great job to the quarterback. Sometimes there's throwaways that, maybe he's pressured and there's nothing else to do. That's not his fault. But, it was a little subjective, but I tried to create a criteria for it. And I thought it was helpful in presenting what it actually looked like there throughout the summer. And so the final day of practice turns out to be a pretty good completion percentage. Maybe you'd like a few more completions there and some very high-end type of plays. There's a route over the middle of the field to Jefferson in the intermediate area that's just bang on. Just drop back, see it, throw it, hit it. And the number of those as camp went along just steadily increased for Kyler Murray, but I would not call it a perfect practice to end the summer. So let's take a look at the other notes from today. As JJ McCarthy was practicing along with Carson Wentz, I'm sorry, because Kyler Murray was practicing along with Carson Wentz. JJ McCarthy was not practicing. He was on the sideline due to his ankle injury. And yes, he did practice each of the last 2 days, but the only thing that he really did was just 7-on-7 stuff. And I did say yesterday to, I think it was Andrew Kramer, I was like, does it look to you like McCarthy is moving around a little bit slow, a little bit ginger, and this being a very hard practice where you're trying to get as much work as you possibly can in real environments for Carson Wentz and the second team, that, if they wanted McCarthy to play full out for today, that might have been difficult for him with the ankle injury that he's dealing with. But that wasn't really the most interesting part of it, because we knew he was banged up, and it wasn't necessarily a shock that he wasn't going to participate in this hard practice. And again, you got to get the guys with the twos out there as much work as they can in this environment as well, and have them do some work against the second defense and, so forth. But it was really the press conference that maybe had the biggest eyebrow raise, because I did not necessarily expect Kevin O'Connell to want JJ McCarthy to play against the Denver Broncos. And he came out and said, yeah, he's not going to practice today, but we're hoping to get him ready to play against the Denver Broncos, which must mean that they feel like there is a fairly quick timeline or turnaround with this injury that he has for his ankle, that they believe that he could play against the Denver Broncos. So Wentz ends up taking all the second team snaps, and KOC mentioned that, they do want Carson Wentz to play. And he said that, these reps are valuable for both of these guys to get in. And when he was asked about the QB2 situation, he did not commit to JJ McCarthy as QB2. And I just want to stop there because there's some other notes, but let's focus for a minute here on the quarterback situation. The injury, the performance in the preseason. I did hear, Ben Lieber talking about the relationship inside of the room and his questions about that. And I am not reporting anything on that. I've not heard anything, but one of the jobs of the backup quarterback is to support the starting quarterback. So if that's not what he's going to do, then he can't be the backup quarterback. And if he's not willing to do that, then he probably should exit and have someone else come in, like Cooper Rush or whoever, to support the starting quarterback. And I did have someone question me on this the other day and pointed out to them that in an article I wrote from earlier about the quarterback competitions from earlier this summer, I was told by a former NFL backup quarterback that they were told by Nick Saban when he coached for the Miami Dolphins that supporting the starter is your number one job. So it is getting the starter prepped, but also getting the rest of the defense prepped, being the guy who's going through on the scout team and all that. There's a lot that goes into that job that is not just sort of sitting around and developing yourself, that he would have to be ready for if he's going to be the backup quarterback. So that's part of the judgment here, not just who could go in a pinch and not just who they think would go in longer term. And I do wonder if this latest ankle injury, if it moves the tide at all, and the performance against the Ravens where he misses two wide open throws. And then there's another, at least one or two that were not good either. And the overall completion percentage is right in that 50% range. Again, in a scenario where Ethan Kaliak-Manis in the preseason is completing 70% of his passes, it really shouldn't be that hard. So the performance from McCarthy since losing the job, I thought he was okay in joint practices, did have a really bad pick six there. I don't know that it's been convincing to be the backup quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings for JJ McCarthy. And I don't know if it's been convincing for them to say, we want to keep going down this road. I truly do not think that anything we've seen since that moment has made me believe, oh yeah, they gotta absolutely stay with, JJ McCarthy here and keep developing him. It's been, once again, here's another injury that, we're talking about with JJ McCarthy. And I mean, think about, he has played in how many actual games, including preseason. So there's 4 preseason and there is 10 games that he's played in. He has now been hurt. So that's 14 total football contests of any kind. He has now been hurt in 5 of them. Less than one every 3 times that he plays football, he's been hurt where he had to miss anything, any type of practice. And I've also got to imagine that what KOC is thinking is, are you, in terms of the injury, not wanting to play against the Denver Broncos? Again, not something that I heard, but just something that I think is, maybe the swelling increases in the ankle when you hear that the coach wants you to play in the 3rd preseason game. I don't know. That would be entirely speculation on my part, but it did cross my mind of I don't know that McCarthy wants to go out and play another preseason game to try and prove himself even more after all of these things have transpired over the last number of months in training camp, but then even going back to the team replacing him with Kyler Murray when they signed him back in March or early April, whenever it was. So there's all that sort of spinning in the air. And does it feel like the question that I had coming out of today was, does it feel like the winds are blowing more toward a trade than they ever have been? Because I think if you're the organization, if you're the front office, if you're Kevin O'Connell, the number one thing you want from a backup is reliability. And you couldn't even have him throw 17 preseason passes without having multiple ones of them fly over wide receiver's head and then get hit and then get hurt. I mean, we've talked about this scenario where, well, if Murray were to get hurt long term, then, well, it'd be better to have JJ come in. But where is the evidence that McCarthy could play over a long period of time where he's holding the ball too often and he's taking a lot of these hits and he does play in a reckless fashion? Can you really trust that? And we also have not seen at the end of this entire thing, for me, enough to believe, okay, there's something there that you want to keep going down this road, keep developing this, and it will work out. I have long said that it's possible for JJ McCarthy, if he puts in the work, it takes the long road, that he could get to being a starting quarterback at some point. But from here to his last year of his rookie deal, I don't think that point is coming. So I would not be shocked now, I think, with all the events that have transpired, if they did decide to make a trade. Again, this is just who knows, right? But before this week, before the most recent preseason, before the preseason games, I was probably sitting in a spot where I was saying, well, don't do that, because you could always get to the third quarterback. And I think my tone is now this, that once upon a time, Tom Moore said, the reason we don't give the backup quarterback reps is because if the backup quarterback plays, we are screwed, just to paraphrase. And I feel like that's where the Vikings are with the Kyler Murray situation, where Carson Wentz can get you through a couple games. He did not practice well today in terms of the results were not great. He hasn't had that many reps once again. But I feel like if either one of these quarterbacks had to play long-term, it is going to be a really, really hard ride for the Minnesota Vikings. And it would be very difficult in this division to see them making the playoffs. So I've kind of just started to get to the point where I'm shrugging my shoulders over this. Like, whatever happens, happens. If you trade him away, I don't think it's going to be one of the biggest regrets of your life. And if you keep him on the roster, I don't think that's going to, bibbity bobbity boo. He just develops behind the scenes and then turns into a quarterback that is playable for next year, because the catastrophic problems have continued to be the catastrophic problems. If you can't consistently throw accurately and you can't stay on the field, these are catastrophic problems. And if you have an ankle get banged up and you have to come out of the game and then you can't practice the next day and you can't play in the preseason game to get yourself some more reps, when is this development supposed to ever happen? So I think that they have gotten to a point where it's like there's just a lot of maybe exasperation with the situation with McCarthy. And if they decide that, he's not going to be helpful behind the scenes, then just call it a day, and the future of the Vikings quarterback situation will be determined at a later date. But at this point, it's just hard to see from what we've seen through this entire camp that if Murray got hurt, that you could trust McCarthy to come in for 4 games, win you 2 of them, and then go from there, because he'd have to stay healthy for 4 games. He'd have to be accurate. He'd have to play on time. And these are things that maybe Carson Wentz is a little more qualified for. And it's also, the season is here. There's no longer a need to discuss QB2 after this is resolved. I mean, okay, if he's traded, there's going to be some kind of emergency podcast right away if that happens. But if it doesn't, I think that there isn't any legs to stand on of, oh, well, he should have had the job, or, he's been wronged, or anything else like that. It's just this thing continues to hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. Time to shift the attention to Kyler Murray, starting quarterback. Vikings can win games and win the division and all that sort of stuff. So there's that in a nutshell. We will see if he plays on Friday. If he doesn't, I could just envision like the frustration from the coaching staff. Like, we're trying. Hey, you didn't develop him. Trying, but not if he's not going to play in a preseason game where he could get a bunch of throws. I'd like to see him go in and throw 20 more passes in the preseason game. But if he can't play because of another injury, then that's 20 more that we take off the board of all the many, many passes that have been missed. Not physically missed, but just missed from actual playing over the years. So we'll see where that journey takes us, but the backup quarterback situation no longer particularly interesting past this week unless there is a move or a trade. But I don't know that either guy is going to give you a great chance to save the season if Murray goes down longer term. And personally, I would have Carson Wentz as the backup quarterback as of today. I just think you could trust him more, and he played better last year. KOC also said, just moving on, that Caleb Tiernan and Theo Jackson will be back by week 1, or at least there's a good chance that they'll be back by week 1. The safety position, I'll just skip forward a little bit, was addressed with Harrison Smith, and what Kevin O'Connell said, my ears perked up. When my dog gets interested, he has these floppy ears. They go whoop, and they both pop up. That was me. The ears popped up when O'Connell said that he talks every week to Harrison Smith, and it was not all about his golf game. And I think what that means is, especially after losing Jamal Adams and seeing the anguish on the face of Brian Flores yesterday talking about Jamal Adams, like they had clearly designed stuff for him. And he looked like he was going to be a major part of the team before he had that injury, which I didn't know what to expect when they signed him. But obviously that was a big deal behind the scenes and what Brian Flores thought of Jamal Adams. So losing Jamal Adams, banged up Theo Jackson, haven't gotten the sense that there's unequivocal trust for Theo Jackson throughout this entire offseason, with the fact that there have been other guys rotating in, including Jacob Thomas. I do not believe that you want Jacob Thomas right away to be asked. I think he's going to have a long career, but right away to be asked to jump in there and play at a safety position versus Christian Watson and Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden, and all that. I mean, that would be a lot for an undrafted free agent. I think that they would love if Harrison Smith called them up and said, Tutu's coming back. So there was a little hint of that maybe KOC is trying to, hey, can we get an answer here? Are you coming back? We need you, like you, love you, someday hope to put a gold jacket on you, etc. But it does sound like they really would like Harrison Smith back, and we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. But the fact that KOC was not dismissive of the idea, and there have been other times where he's been like, I don't know, whatever. This time it was kind of like, yeah, would like that to happen, and we'll see if that message is heard from Harrison Smith and he wants to get it together now that camp is over. No more living in the hotel or anything like that where you can just jump right. I mean, it's Harrison Smith. Can he be ready in 2 weeks? Of course he can. And I would assume that if he thought all the time that he was coming back, that he would be getting ready and working hard and working out and everything else. He knows the defense better than any human alive. So other than Brian Flores, so I don't know. I mean, was today a little bit of a tip of the scales? Because I've been sitting here thinking, well, probably not, right? Like, this seems like a fan kind of pipe dream a little. And of course the players are going to say, would love to have Harry back, but is that really going to happen after the way it last year ended? I wonder if he also wanted to know what it looked like in camp, wanted to know what Kyler looked like. But we'll see. You talk about, boy, it's going to be a slow couple weeks, but it feels like it's not, right? It feels like the emergency podcast button could be hammered a couple of times. So stay tuned. Keep your ears ready to pop up. Also, Tyler Batty got a shout out from O'Connell today. He's had a very good preseason. As we go through the outside linebacker stuff, that also called Ty Ingram Dawkins a bright spot of training camp, and talked about the versatility of Ingram Dawkins. And the longer we've gone, the more I've started to wonder, are they just going to roll with this? Are they just going to kind of stick with this outside linebacker thing and not make a move because they like what they've seen from Batty, who was a really good pass rusher in college, is a big dude, and Eric Wilson has played outside linebacker. Jake Golday has played outside linebacker. Like, could it be if Dallas Turner got banged up, maybe by committee where they just go, all right, well, it's going to be a different outside linebacker every play, and we're going to figure out a lot of different ways to deal with it. And in the 3-4, you're putting a defensive tackle often over a tackle in kind of that 5 technique or 4 technique, somewhere in between. So can you cause problems with someone like Caleb Banks there, or Ty Ingram Dawkins there, or Jalen Redmond there, and then put an outside linebacker, even if they're undersized, on the outside? So it's not just rush against the tackle, rush against the tackle, rush against the tackle, which is what Dallas Turner is set to do. So I think that if they can't find another outside linebacker, or they just love what they've seen, they're going to have a contingency plan of, this is what we're going to do if Dallas Turner were to get hurt. And also wanted to mention that Dylan Bell was wide receiver 3 today in the scrimmage. Jayshon Jones was sidelined, not related to the suspension, although, they did talk about that a little bit today, but I think related to an injury. And there you have it. There is your full rundown of what happened at training camp today. So here's what I want to do. I want to get into my conversation with Dane Mizutani. I promised a vibe check, and we have gone into the greatest detail that we've ever gone into here on Purple Insider in the vibe check. So my conversation with Dane Mizutani is coming up in just a minute. But I do want to give you, and then after that, hang around, and a lot of you, which is amazing, love to listen to the whole show and then, interact and everything. So hang around, and I will answer questions after the in-depth vibe check conversation. But I want to get you a FanDuel question of the day, which is, the Vikings have moved up a little bit to plus 138 to make the playoffs. So they have been rising on FanDuel. Has anything changed about your opinion of the team during this training camp? So now the camp is over. What's your vibe check? Has anything changed? Have you increased the win for your expectation? Decreased? Gotten more cynical? Gotten more happy about the team? Gotten more excited? Where is your vibe gone now that training camp is over? And during the course of camp, the Vikings, at least in the markets on FanDuel, have gone up with their chance to make the postseason. So I want to tell you about friends at Brooklyn Betting, and then on to my conversation right after practice with Dane, and then your questions after that. So Brooklyn Betting, just an incredible partner of mine here on Purple Insider. Just 2026 has been such a great summer for me, sleeping wise. I struggled for years with my back issues, struggled to get sleep. And then I got this Aurora Lux mattress from Brooklyn Betting. Changed everything. I get to sleep so much faster. The spine is in such a better place than it was before. And I think it's just because of the construction. They're built in the USA, which is, not the case for everything. And while it is cost effective, it's also built with long-term durability in mind. And it doesn't feel mass produced. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels solid, intentional. I'm going to have this thing for a very, very long time. And now I wake up ready to cover this football team and all the emergency podcasts that come along. And what I like is that we had lots of options when we sought out to get a new mattress from Brooklyn Betting. They have mattresses for every body type, every sleep style, hard to find sizes. It's been great. And we got what we wanted. Had that not been the case, wouldn't have to change mattress sellers, because they do have a 120 night comfort trial. So if it hadn't worked out, we could swap the mattress for something that worked better, or even return it hassle-free. Won't be doing that though. So go to brooklynbetting.com and use my promo code PURPLE at checkout. 30% off if you use the promo code PURPLE, which is insane. So go over to brooklynbetting.com, promo code PURPLE for 30% off. All right, now my conversation. If you were wondering, hey, how do you guys come away from camp? Do you like what you see? Are you really skeptical? How do you feel? Well, we're going to give you that for every single position on the field. Myself, Dane Mizutani, earlier today from TCO Performance Center. All right, inside TCO Performance Center, Matthew Coller with Dane Mizutani of the Pioneer Press for our official training camp is over vibe check. And what we're going to do is talk about the big picture, the global vibe check of the Minnesota Vikings, and then we're going to go position by position and each position's overall vibe. And we've done this in years past, Dane, where we kind of figure out, all right, how do we feel about everything? And there have been some years where we have really nailed the vibe. Hey, 2024, this looks like it's coming together. Looks like they got a lot of talent. And there are other years that you guys probably remember where we felt a different way and it, didn't work out exactly. So let's talk about this year's training camp. And overall, give me one word and then explain that word to describe the vibe of the 2026 Minnesota Vikings training camp.
I'm going to go hopeful, because I think if you're a Vikings fan, you can feel hopeful about the vibe of this season. I don't necessarily want to go out and say, like the other word that came to mind was roller coaster. That seems a little bit too negative. I don't think it's going to be up and down crazy this year. But I don't want to come out and say the word Super Bowl either, because I don't necessarily know that this team is going to go guns a-blazing right away and just light the world on fire. But I think hopeful fits because, one, I started at 10 wins and now I'm up to 11. But two, and more so in talking seriously, I think you can feel pretty good about where this team is headed, because I think you can feel pretty good about where Kyler Murray's at in the grand scheme of the offense. Maybe a few reps here or there earlier in camp might have helped him feel more comfortable with where he's at now. But I think when you watch him play, it's very obvious this guy was once upon a time the number one overall pick. The arm talent is there. It's understandable why they went out and got him. And I think when you apply that to the offense should be better this year. And then you flip over to the side on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're going to be pretty good. I think I came on the podcast after the game, or it was last week, and said if everything goes according to plan, I think it could be a top 5 defense. So I'm hopeful about this season, and I think that it could be a good one. I also think that there's going to be times where maybe it is a bit of a roller coaster and you want to pull your hair out. But overall, I walk away from this camp feeling pretty good about what this Vikings team could become in a few months here.
I like that word because I think a lot of things that we went into training camp as training camp questions have been resolved in ways that were very favorable. And we'll get into that when we get into the different positions. But a lot of those questions have been answered in ways that have been the best possible outcome to know right now. And as you said, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should start ordering the rings for this team. It just means that of all those things that could have gone wrong, there hasn't been too many things that have. And I think that a lot of times when we try to evaluate a training camp, it is often more about the things that go wrong than the things that go right in terms of what translates into the regular season. I would use the word healthy because they have come out of this 99% healthy. And you do have to knock on wood, but there's really no more hard practices that are left. You see teams around the league. Ashton Genty gets hurt, and the San Francisco 49ers have had a bunch of injuries. And there's a lot of teams that are getting key players banged up. Jordan Tyson with the New Orleans Saints, and the Vikings, as they practice today with their final scrimmage that they do every year before training camp officially wraps up. Every player on the field is a starter except for Theo Jackson, whose injury is not serious and is expected to be ready for week 1. That is a heck of a place to be, not to mention Christian Darrisaw took all of the reps during the joint practices, and we have not seen him have to come out for rest days for Ryan Vandermark to go in, and he played in the preseason game, plowed some people over. Like, the health of this team, Will Fries has looked like his health has been improved. Kyler Murray was coming off of an injury last year, has not been limited in any possible way throughout this entire training camp, and they've gotten through these preseason games without any catastrophic injuries except for Jamal Adams. And not saying that that one doesn't count or mean anything, because it does. And they really liked where Jamal Adams was headed and what he meant to the locker room. But in terms of the guys who we thought would make the biggest impact on the 2026 season, healthy is the word. And then there's another version of healthy too, because there's healthy as in your physical health, and then there's like healthy relationships, right? And I think that they have had a healthy amount of play from Kyler Murray that has looked good, and that the line has come together pretty well, and that the defensive line has made a healthy amount of progress together from last year in terms of their development curve. And we've seen that from some other key players as well. So I think that the health of the entire operation, from coaching to player development to actually the training room, has all kind of come together really well in this training camp.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's like, I think when you look back on a training camp, you don't even, or when you're in the depths of a training camp and we're in that hamster wheel, you can almost forget that once you get to the end of that, how healthy was this team? Because each day goes by, and sometimes, and we've experienced this in the past at training camps, where you almost forget how many people have gotten hurt or how unhealthy a training camp has been. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it almost is something I've glossed over completely, because we haven't had any major injuries come up yet. And that is a big thing, and that's not something you can always bank on. But when you get to, we're at August 26th now, and we're, I think, like 18 something days from the season opener, and you can look at the depth chart, and we're going to put out our final 53-man rosters here, and you can go down the list and say, yep, that guy can pencil him in. That's just something that other teams across the league would kill for at this point in time. So I think healthy works. I think if everybody is healthy, that leads for hope. So I think hopeful works. It's a good vibe right now from a global perspective looking at this team. And I think there were question marks. I think heading into training camp, it was a little bit, how is this going to go? How is this quarterback competition going to play out? How is the team going to respond to new faces in certain areas of the team? And overall, from top to bottom, I think the roster looks pretty good. I think there is a chance to do something special down the road if everything starts to kind of click and fire on all cylinders. But that only happens if you can get through a training camp fully healthy.
So let's go with the positions, and we'll start with the quarterback position and the vibe of the quarterback position coming out of training camp. And if you want to assign a particular word to start your vibe check, you can. I think that if I was going to pick a word for Kyler Murray and the starting quarterback position, I would say that solid would be my word. That it has looked like Murray knows how to run the offense. It has looked like Murray can throw the football really well at times. And there are also times in practice where there is a miss. And there are ups and downs throughout the time of training camp on the whole. It's not like he came in here and performed like Drew Brees instantly, but it was not the best possible version of what it could have been, but a good version of what it could have been for Kyler Murray. So I think the vibe to me is overall just good. Like, not holy cow, there's no way they don't finish with the top 5 offense, but like, this looks like it's going to work, is how I've taken it. How have you taken the quarterback vibe?
Yeah, I mean, the word I'd pick is polarizing, but I kind of joke. It has been polarizing, though, because I think when you look at something that is polarizing, it is obviously one side can be perceived as completely different than the other side. But that can also be a word to describe performances day to day. And I think at times the performances from Kyler Murray have been a bit polarizing, where some days have been good, some days have been not so good. But I think solid works, and that's how I walk away from training camp feeling, is because it's not a word, but I think I would describe this training camp as, from Kyler Murray, as, oh yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. And that's how I felt many times throughout camp. And I know we got through the quarterback competition, and I know we were jockeying for maybe it's Kyler, maybe it's JJ, but once the decision was made, and even before the decision was made, there were a lot of times I sat on the hill and thought to myself, yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. So I think there are going to be times throughout the year where Kyler does something and you go, that's not what it was supposed to look like. But there's going to be so many more times where I think you just remember this offense, when it hasn't gotten some of the worst quarterback play we've seen, has been one of the better offenses in the league. I think we're going to see that enough, and I think we're going to see that even more as time progresses. So it hasn't been the most spectacular training camp of all time for Kyler Murray, but I think it's been good. And I think that's something to feel good about where this quarterback room, or him leading the quarterback room could take you.
How about word or phrase? Phrases are probably going to be a little easier here because you could go with, it wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. It was more of like the total median outcome. There was one outcome where he did look like Drew Brees and we would just be over there losing our minds. And then there was another outcome where we would be watching on a day-to-day basis and go, oh my gosh, this doesn't look good at all. And neither thing was true. There was never a day, he's had a couple really good days where the ball didn't hit the ground too much, but there was never a day where I went, I am all in, 14 wins. This is Darnold all over again. But there's also never been a day where I thought he would lose the competition. I don't think I even moved the needle 1 inch in that direction toward JJ McCarthy, which I think tells you that the negative stuff was never bad enough to ever sound any real alarms, even when there were a couple of down practices. When it comes to JJ McCarthy and the backup situation, I would just say my phrase would be no new information, because I don't think I come out of this thinking anything new than from what I thought the last time I saw JJ McCarthy when he was playing against the Green Bay Packers in week 18, that I think he's totally capable of some really nice throws. I think his physical tools shine all the time in practice, but I also think that accuracy, anticipation, the being locked into the timing of the offense, those things have not made the gains that people hoped that they would. And we've seen that in the preseason games. And it feels like this is the same exact quarterback who didn't really change at all. And maybe the coaches would tell me, dude, you're totally wrong. He does this, 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 and this better. But I can only judge the results, and the results are no new information.
Yeah, my phrase, actually, I'm cheating now. We did one word, then I did a phrase. Now you've given a phrase. Yeah. I'm going to cheat again. My thing is shrugs. Like those watching at a video, like I'm shrugging right now for those listening at home. That's how I feel about JJ McCarthy, because I don't know. Like I was told that there was going to be mechanical changes, and maybe if I squinted, I could see them in practice. But then I watched the preseason game against the Giants. I watched the preseason game against the Ravens. And by and large, it looks like the same guy. And then the most important practice of the summer was today. Besides the 2 joint practices against the Ravens, the way Kevin O'Connell structures training camp is that the final practice of training camp, the day 19 of training camp, has typically been a scrimmage where they work on everything from top to bottom, offense, defense. It's a pretty intense practice, and they go very long. I set that all up to say he didn't practice today. JJ McCarthy got hurt in the Baltimore Ravens game, so he could not practice today in one of the most important practices of training camp. So that's why I'm shrugging. I'm throwing my hands up in the air. I don't know what else to think anymore, because it's kind of the same old story with him, where the inconsistencies in his play rise to a certain level of concern, but then his inability to stay on the field rises to a certain level of concern. Like, imagine if none of this quarterback competition happened. Imagine they never brought Kyler Murray in. Imagine they just rolled forward with JJ McCarthy. And imagine he got hurt coming out of a preseason game, heading into the regular season. I just don't think you could feel good about it. That's why they did everything that they did, and that's why they operated as they did this offseason. But yeah, I mean, no new information is true, but I'm just kind of throwing my hands up in the air when I look at kind of the development and how everything has transpired for JJ McCarthy to this point. I'm not ready to fully fire him off into outer space, but it has not been at all, I think, the arc you were hoping for if you were the Vikings, if you were JJ McCarthy, if you were the Crusaders that have planted your flag in the JJ McCarthy camp. It hasn't been the offseason and certainly the training camp that you wanted it to be.
Yeah, and that's, I guess you could use different words or phrases from each side of that. Like the people who were doubtful on McCarthy, the people who are sort of steadfast that he was going to win the competition and be much better than Kyler Murray, or just be much better than his previous version. And no new information for either side. I mean, there's nothing that you could, if you were just dead set, he's going to win the competition, he's going to be great. He didn't give you any information to work with to back that up. And if you were not convinced that McCarthy could be the starting quarterback at any point, you were given no information addition that would change your mind. And even an injury is not new at all, considering that he had 4 different injuries last year where he had to miss time. And then this is what happens when you hold on to the ball too long, is that you start taking hits. And you could blame the offensive lineman, and for sure there was some struggles with blocking. But if you hold on to the ball and you don't see it the way you're supposed to see it and get rid of it, that's going to happen. And that's how I don't believe in injury prone, but I believe in hit prone. Like, he is prone to taking hits, which he did again, which is why he has to miss practice, and an opportunity to make gains and have a really intense practice is once again missed. So yeah, same old song and dance would be another way to put that vibe. And I don't know what happens next with JJ McCarthy. That's a different podcast. So let's go to the running back room, and I suppose just by proxy, running game. What is your vibe for the running backs and running game?
I'll go right back to one word: intrigued. I'm very intrigued. Maybe even I would even say encouraged. Like, I think everything that Kevin O'Connell has said, I guess every offseason he's talked about how he wants to improve the running game. This is to me, is really the first offseason where we've seen like wholesale changes. Not only do I want to improve the running game, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to make sure it looks different. And so far with what I've seen, it looks different. And I am intrigued by how this application of the running game could go from practice to how it's going to look in week 1 against the Packers. There have been moments throughout training camp where I see that wide zone, I see that cutback from either Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason. And not only do I think that's completely different than what I've ever seen out of this running game, I think to myself that that's probably going to work in the regular season. Now, I want to see it against the Packers in week 1, against the Bears in week 2, and every week thereafter. But there have been marked changes to the running game so far. And while I think everybody would want a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Bijan Robinson in their backfield, I think the running game that the Vikings have now instituted works in concert with what Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason do well, which is they're patient runners who know when it's time to keep it upfield or cut back across the grain. And part of the running game, and this is kind of jumping ahead, but is the offensive line, and watching how they fire off the ball. It's all very, very intriguing to me how it's going to look when the bullets are live. But I've been watching that kind of with a pretty fine-tooth comb this training camp, and to see the differences in real time has been something that I've enjoyed watching.
I'm going to go with a metaphor here.
We're all over the place, and I love it.
Kevin O'Connell has opened the box that has the ring in it, and he has reached it out to the run game and said, "Will you marry me, run game?" He's taken that step. That's a real commitment.
Yeah,
I mean, you and I have both done that, and we know that you really got to get yourself like, okay, I'm in a spot where I'm going to propose, and it takes a lot of courage. So he has proposed to the run game. That's putting big personnel out there. That's drafting a fullback. That's bringing in Frank Smith. That's changing offensive line coaches. That's running out of the pistol and the shotgun, probably more than he's comfortable with. We've seen a lot of that. Committing to an actual scheme that you feel like is an identity rather than just sort of plays. All right, that's all there. But you got to prove it when you walk up to that altar and someone says, "Do you take the running game's hand in marriage?" And you got to say, "It's 2nd down and 1. Do you take the running game?" And if you say, "I do," and you call in that play, wide zone left or whatever to Jordan Mason, that's when we'll really know. But I think you can see a lot of signs of it, and all we can work with is the information we have right now. So I think that the proposal has been made. I think the effort has been made. I think that the commitment has been made. But when you actually get in those games against the Green Bay Packers and you have a chance to impose your will with Jordan Mason and this offensive line, which has been healthy, are you really going to do it? And I think the fact that Mason has looked really good in this camp makes a difference, that he came back really ready to go. I don't know what Damon Claiborne is going to be, but you might have an extra option there to pitch the football to from time to time. Aaron Jones is totally healthy. So those things make it easier for you, where I do think that some of the criticisms of his run attack, which have happened from us, but some of them are a little bit not fair when you have Christian Darrisaw goes out and you're playing maybe Joe Huber or something and going, "Why the heck didn't you run more?" And it's like, well, that's not the most ideal unit to run behind, whereas I think this is a bit of a change, which leads us into the offensive line and the vibe check there.
Yeah, I don't even have a full word or a thought. I think it's very good. Like the potential of that line could be sky high, and it starts and stops with Christian Darrisaw to me. Just watching him in practice throughout this summer, and even more than that, listening to him talk to us this summer, it's a completely different guy because he definitely feels like himself again. And when Christian Darrisaw feels like himself again, that's scary for other teams because you can make an argument that him at his peak is the best left tackle in the league. And I think you could have a spirited debate about that because of what he's able to do at that position. He just erases guys. What the first play of the exhibition slate against the New York Giants in East Rutherford, it's a wide zone play, and Christian Darrisaw's out there, and he's putting the guy on his butt 5 yards downfield. That's who he is. He's a mauler in the run game that also is an anchor in the pass game. And when you look at kind of the way he's played through training camp, it almost is like a microcosm of the entire offensive line. The confidence looks there for Christian Darrisaw, and the confidence looks there for the entire offensive line. I don't know if it's fair because Brian O'Neill's really good too, and like you got Donovan Jackson, who I think has taken steps forward, and Will Fries, who have taken steps forward, to say the line goes with Christian Darrisaw, but I think the line goes with Christian Darrisaw. If he's healthy, if he's ready to go, everything is easier for the offensive line. So I think the potential is sky high for that group. The only worry I would have, I guess, is Blake Brandel in the middle. We've seen struggles with the shotgun snaps, less so in the last couple of weeks, so that's good, but I am going to, it's kind of how, it's going to be a random jump across the aisle, but it's how I felt about Miles Price heading into last year. How is he going to be? Is he going to catch that first punt? And then after a while, I was not worried about Miles Price catching the punt. That's how I'm going to feel about Blake Brandel in the shotgun. Is the ball going to hit Kyler right in the hands, or is it going to sail over his head? He's got to do it over and over and over again for me to fully trust him. There's been progression, but there's still been a few times where I'm like, this could be a little bit dicey. So that's the only part of the offensive line I'm really concerned with. But overall, I think that group has sky-high potential.
I will go with violent, that they have looked much more violent than in years past. And I think that is the coaching of Keith Carter. And I think Kevin O'Connell is also backing that approach and wanting them to fire off the ball. We've heard time and time again, but you actually can see it. They want to be the ones making first contact, not absorbing the contact necessarily in the run game. And then in pass protection, you're absolutely right that Christian Darrisaw's health maybe was the number one thing of everything outside of how Kyler Murray picks up the offense. But the number two thing in this entire camp, like if you want to end up with a good vibe check for the Purple Insider podcast, 7-1 better be really healthy and look really good. And the fact that he was able to play against Trey Hendrickson snap after snap against the Baltimore Ravens, Dallas Turner and him have been battling each day. And I think he's gotten the best of Dallas Turner, even though Turner, when he went against the Ravens, I mean, it was getting pressures and sacks every other play. So I think we've seen those two work off of each other. But that guy is the anchor of the offensive line. I've always believed that with one weakness, you can make up for it. You can help, you can adjust. Two weaknesses is really hard. Weakness at left tackle is impossible. If you are getting toasted at left tackle, I don't know what you're supposed to do. And last year, they were one of the highest teams in the league in terms of using help on the tackle position. That also opens up TJ Hawkinson to not have to do that all the time. Like there is a trickle-down effect of the left tackle that I think is always been known by coaches and maybe isn't appreciated enough by us until we watch and cover this team without Christian Darrisaw in there. So the vibe of health goes back to it, and the vibe of violence. We've seen, I think, a different attitude from this offensive line, and they come off the field really huffing and puffing, but also talking about how they are appreciating those changes. On the defensive side, the D-line is probably the most intriguing group of the entire training camp for me to watch outside of quarterback, because you have a first-round draft pick, a third-round draft pick, two developing players in there, a guy who is the most underappreciated beast monster, which is Jalen Redmond. That one, I think growth would be my word in terms of the defensive tackles.
Yeah, growth, because if you look at that defensive tackle room or defensive line room, and you just go through each guy that's probably going to make the team, they have the most unique stories of, I think, any defensive line room in the entire National Football League. You have a guy like Jalen Redmond, former UFL guy, who I thought was going to get fired off into the sun because my first memory of Jalen Redmond was him getting thrown out of practice for fighting. And now he low-key might be like the lifeblood of that group in the trenches. And then you have Levi Drake Rodriguez, who they got out of Texas A&M Commerce. And then they have Ty Ingram Dawkins, who sometimes plays in the defensive line room, sometimes plays on an edge, barely played at Georgia, but was somebody they believed in. You have Elijah Williams, who made the team as an undrafted free agent, I think a rookie tryout guy. And then you obviously have Caleb Banks and Dominique Orange. So growth is a good word for it, because we have seen them take steps forward, both in kind of the short term with Caleb Banks and Dominique Orange. I think they're better on August 26th than they were on June 26th. And I think, but growth from Jalen Redmond, going from a guy who is a project player to a guy who is a beast. It applies across the board for that defensive line room. I think youthful too. Like, that's just, we've seen in the past. We saw it last year. They tried to paper over their problems by signing Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. This year, they just realized, let's lean into the youth. And I think it's paid dividends for them so far. That unit, I think I've been describing it as, has no household names, but is something we're always going to be talking about. I think the Green Bay reporters, when they're coming into US Bank Stadium week 1, probably won't know many people on the defensive line outside of Caleb Banks, but they'll feel them as they walk away from that game. I think that group, low-key, like, has been one that has surprised me and could surprise more people down the road.
I will say deep breaths would be another one that I thought of for the rookies. Yeah. Because anytime you draft somebody, everyone wants to see them right away. They want to see them succeed right away or fail right away, so they could say, I told the Vikings they never should have drafted that guy. But I do think we've learned some lessons under Brian Flores, that he has a bigger vision for these players. I have no idea if Caleb Banks is going to work out or not. I have not seen a lot so far that makes me think that this year there will be a major impact. Mm-hmm. And that is maybe one of the disappointments of camp, that with his size and his quickness and his strength, that I kind of expected to feel that more, expected to be going, oh man, Caleb didn't have a great day, but like, look at this 2 or 3 plays. That has not happened as much as I thought it was going to, but I also have seen Flores do this enough to where, he said yesterday, he's a worker, which means that when that happens, usually things that are good happen. Yeah. And okay, I'm willing to buy that for now, and we'll see how it ends up playing out. I think Orange will be on the field a little bit more. I've liked what I've seen from him in terms of his mobility, his footwork, his drops into coverage are sick. But no, even just his power, like you see that when he's hitting people. Maybe the ceiling is a little bit lower, but he can get on the field maybe quicker and have an impact than Caleb Banks. So there is that little bit. If we're talking about like pluses and minuses, W's and L's, it's probably not in the plus side that Caleb Banks just doesn't look ready to take on any sort of workload in week 1. And we'll see if we're right or wrong about that. But that's the way it's going. And that's sort of the comments from Brian Flores have continued to be, hey, like, don't judge these rookies right away. And we've seen enough develop to believe him. In terms of, let's just go, linebackers and outside linebackers all together.
Prove me wrong is what I'm going to say, because I've said throughout, and this applies more to edge rusher than linebacker. I think they're set at linebacker with Blake Cashman and Eric Wilson. Jake Golday has done a little bit of both. I think we'll probably see him more inside this year, but who knows with Brian Flores. But prove me wrong would apply to the edge rushers not named Andrew Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner. Because I've said from the beginning of, I think, OTAs that, I just assume at some point they're going to add an edge rusher 3. So prove me wrong that they don't. If they don't add an edge rusher 3, then it's on Tyler Batty, it's on Bo Richter, it's on Chaz Chambliss, to prove me wrong that they never needed to in the first place, but also to prove that they're worthy of getting those reps outside of the top 2 guys. So I feel good about Andrew Van Ginkel, always will. He's a unicorn who does everything at the highest level possible on defense. I feel good about Dallas Turner. He's really appeared to take the next step in his development, both from and on the field, what he can do off the edge, standpoint and also an off the field, he kind of feels a little bit more of that leadership role this year. It's something Brian Flores mentioned, which is always a good sign in someone's progression as a player as a whole. But outside of that, I have question marks, and maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe in 3 months I'll look at myself in the mirror and say, how could I ever have doubted Tyler Batty and Bo Richter and Chaz Chambliss? And that's no disrespect to the camp they've had, because they've had a pretty good camp overall. I've just always thought they were going to bring in an edge rusher 3, and I still think they're going to bring in an edge rusher 3, but maybe I'm wrong. So prove me wrong.
Mine is going to be prove me right. Because throughout this training camp, I have gone home and reported each day that Dallas Turner looks like there's another step that's been taken. He looks stronger to me. He looks more confident to me, especially than this time last year where we were praising his progress, but it looks like it's even better. And I have to Google his birthday sometimes to just be reminded that it isn't until February that he reaches the age where Jared Verse was drafted.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, right? And he had 8 sacks last year. I would say it was an okay season for him, down at the beginning, up at the end. And that trajectory has continued for me, in my eyes, watching him on a daily basis. So it's really like prove that right, because that doesn't mean a whole lot. The vibe, of course, is very good for Dallas Turner, and everyone's talking about how good he's looked. But again, that doesn't matter until you actually get on the field. So prove my reporting right that he's been really good in camp. And I would say that for even someone like Jake Golday, who I think has had a phenomenal first training camp as a second-round draft pick. It really started to show up in the preseason game, the violence that he's capable of playing with, his movement skill as somebody who is 6'4" and 240 pounds. And I'm starting to wonder, so I've been on the train as well about outside linebacker. I have started to wonder if the combination of Jake Golday, Eric Wilson, who played outside linebacker more than ever last year, and Tyler Batty, who got praise from the head coach today, could potentially be the paper over. Now, if you were to lose somebody for 6 weeks, I think that's hard to do, but could you potentially treat it like it's going to be a bunch of guys end up with 5 sacks, as opposed to we're going to rely a lot on this one guy to rush the passer time and time again? But the players who have been out there, the second round draft pick, the former first rounder who is developing, that's gone in a good way for them. I also think, Blake Cashman, who his contract is up, but didn't miss a single practice, has just been outstanding. Eric Wilson has really owned that role, and they have depth in that room that maybe they did not have in previous years. So I think the linebacker group is probably the starters. We focus so much on like they're missing this one thing and it's a backup for this position. And then you're like, wait. Reminder, Van Ginkel and Cashman are 2 of the best at their job in the league. And if Turner gets to that point too, you have one of the best units in the NFL when you talk about linebackers. On to the secondary. What is your vibe for, we'll just go whole secondary?
Where are you at, Harrison Smith? Joking, kind of, but
2-2.
Kevin O'Connell told us today that he talks to him every week. So he did not say, he did not even really indicate, at least to me, that anything was imminent, but he talks to him every week. And he admitted today that those conversations aren't always, how's your golf game? I think there is a little bit of like, you ready? Training camp's over. You want to come? Open spot for you. Your locker's still there. Where are you at, Harrison Smith? I think they need him. Like, I really do. I don't think Harrison Smith is going to come here and be Harrison Smith in his prime, but I think Jacob Thomas has been a really fun story of camp. He's a UDFA that, like, if Theo Jackson, and I think he's going to be ready for week 1. Everything indicates that Theo Jackson will be ready for week 1. But if he has a setback, Jacob Thomas might be starting week 1. So I think they need Harrison Smith. I don't know if Harrison Smith is interested in coming back, but that's one now that we're here and the calendar is about to turn to September and we're through the dog days of training camp and we're on to the Green Bay Packers in week 1. Like, if I'm the Vikings and I've waited patiently, and I'm certainly not going to hold Harrison Smith's feet to the fire. He's a legend who deserves the respect that he's gotten throughout this process. But I want to know, are you in? Are you out? Are you coming back, or are we moving on without you? I think they need Harrison Smith, and that's not necessarily to downgrade the camp that Jacob Thomas has had. He's been the story of camp, in my opinion. The camp that Jay Ward has had as kind of that big nickel that they're going to use, and I think those situations and feel pretty good about it. The camp that some of the corners have had. I think obviously we've talked a lot about Chuck Demings, less so lately, but I think they're feeling good about that room from a cornerback's perspective. I think there's intriguing people in the safeties room, but I think they need 2-2.
I think they're a 2-2 away from being top 5.
There we go.
I really do. I mean, because the big question mark that I had was the interior, and the interior has answered a lot of questions, at least, again, to date. I don't know how I'll feel about that on October 27th, but to date, they've answered a lot of my questions, as well as Dallas Turner has. And the fact that everyone is healthy to start the season, it's not like they had somebody lost for the entire year and they're scrambling and we're just not sure how it's all going to go. At this point, with the guys who have been on this defense, almost everybody has been here for multiple years with Brian Flores. They know this thing inside and out. And the one position that you do have questions is next to Josh Metellus in that safety room. And Theo Jackson, I think, is a really likable player and can make plays on the football. But there are shortcomings there of coming downhill and tackling. And it's just a very different thing when you can have Harrison Smith out there playing games with the opposing quarterback. Jared Goff was on Chris Long's podcast just recently, and he said that's a gold jacket guy. He said he's the hardest guy to deal with, one of the hardest guys to deal with in the NFL. Goff can't stand playing against him. Like that, yeah, right? Like there's a reason for that because he is a nightmare even in his older age. The one thing I would wonder from Harrison is, can you play 17? Because they have said this over and over in recent years, like, no, we're going to play him half the snaps and we're going to rotate. And like, no way. Go play all 72 snaps or whatever it takes to win this football game because he's one of the best players on the field and he's the defensive coordinator on the field. So it's been in the back of my mind that, maybe later in the season he would come back. But after the way O'Connell talked, after the way, I'll even add this, the way that Flores talked about losing Jamal Adams, it sounded like he wanted Jamal Adams to really play. Like they might have even been starting Jamal Adams. I wouldn't even be surprised. He was taking all those first team reps and they were all so devastated. It's like, okay, after that happened, was there a little more desperation to those phone calls from, hey, how's the kids? How's your golf game? Is like, no, actually, dude, are you going to do this? Because we could really use you. And I think that is the one weakness area where I would circle and say that could be a real problem. But if Harrison Smith comes back, we saw him in the second half of last year. You always worry about age, but if he comes back and he's running the defense the way he was last year at the end of the season, they could be right there. Because, I mean, how much have they really lost? Just Hargrave and Allen were contributors, but were not playing at the levels that they did before. Grenard was out at the end of the season when they had a lot of their best games with Dallas Turner in there. They could repeat a lot of those performances from last year with this defense, with this DC, if they have Harrison Smith. If they do not, then I'm still going to continue to have questions. And you don't, for all respect to Jacob Thomas, incredible camp. He's really proven himself. And long term, he's a player. I think he's going to be in the NFL for a long time. But is that what you want to be asking a guy right now? Like, hey, go from James Madison to playing in the NFL. Being good in training camp is very different than Christian Watson's speed on a real football field. So 2-2. What'd you say? Where are you at?
Where are you at, Harrison?
Where are you at? Okay, well, special teams is, Will Reichard's vibe's always good. And the punting competition, I don't know if that's a vibe thing. It's been kind of fun. Like the punters have punted a lot. And so I guess this is the last statement then. The last final statement, unless you have anything else. Oh, how about?
I think we skipped receivers.
Did we skip receivers?
I think
that's
we might
my
have.
bad. That's my bad. I went right to the defense from the offensive line. And I do have one more after that. So, okay, sorry about that. I didn't say it was going to be in order. The vibe of the podcast is not perfectly in order. Receivers.
I think it makes sense why we just glossed over it because I got no worries about them. Like I think top to bottom, the room's great. I think 1 through 3 might be the best 1 through 3 in the league. I think Ty Felton's had a good camp. I think Miles Price has had a good camp. I think we just glossed over it because, you got Justin Jefferson, and now you got someone who you think's going to throw him the ball with more consistency, and you got Jordan Addison, who made a sick catch today, and Jawan Jennings, who made a one-handed grab today. They're just going to be a good. It's in my opinion, the best receiving room in the league. top to bottom, yeah, no worries.
Ready to return to form.
There you go.
Is how I would put it. And you're right, because we haven't had any real questions. We know how good these players are. And every one of them is proven outside of wide receiver 4 and 5, which, might make a difference in the season. But from the start of the season, those 3 receivers are going to make the biggest difference. Hockenson has looked rejuvenated in some ways, but I also think that last year he was probably okay, and the throws never found him. Josh Oliver, the third tight end. We've seen Gavin Bartholomew, which is a good sign for them. But you're right. There's a reason why you're not talking a lot about those guys specifically, is because they all have resumes that would suggest that if the ball arrives with them, they're going to succeed. And I think the chemistry between Kyler and Justin Jefferson has been very good overall. Mm-hmm. And that would be more important than anything else. But that was, I thought, I guess it kind of got baked into the quarterback conversation, is that connection with Jefferson. The last one, I think we know what the vibe of Brian Flores is. You see his wry smile. What do you think the vibe of Kevin O'Connell is?
I think he probably feels some pressure. I think he understands the importance of this chapter in the story for him. We don't have to remind him that he has no playoff wins yet. I think he feels that. I think he feels the pressure that comes with one of not everybody gets to be a head coach in the NFL. And in a lot of cases, you don't get to be a head coach for long in the NFL. Kevin O'Connell's done a very good job since he's gotten here. He has changed the culture completely. He has developed certain people in the system. He has helped Sam Darnold revitalize his career. He's gotten the most out of Kirk Cousins, but we're here in the year of 2026, and he still does not have a playoff win. And I think he feels that. And I think that's why there was intentionality to going out and finding a quarterback to run the system that he wants to run. They penciled in Kyler Murray. They figured out and homed in on Kyler Murray from the beginning, and they signed him early in free agency. I think that's why there was intentionality from Kevin O'Connell to change and revamp the running game. I think that's why there is intentionality with every single decision that's been made this offseason. The training camp itself felt a little bit more, increased in terms of intensity than it has in years past. I feel like there's some pressure here, and understandably so. I think he's feeling it too. But if he takes Kyler Murray and the offense and it functions the way that it hasn't in the past when we've had competent quarterback play, and the defense is still what it is, and we roll into January in the playoffs and he wins a game, then everybody will be singing his praises again. But yeah, it's time now to take the next step forward as a franchise, and I think he's feeling that.
If I was being funny, I'd say, oops, I did it again with another retread quarterback. Because I think the connection between him and Kyler Murray has shown out on the practice field with his command of the offense. We see every day Kyler Murray commanding the offense. I don't know what's going to happen in the real games. That's a theme of this podcast because it's a vibe check, not exactly even a prediction. But we do know that Murray gets to the line of scrimmage, gets play calls in, throws on time often to the place where the football is supposed to go. And if you're Kevin O'Connell, if that happens, it's going to work because it has before. But truly, it's probably anxious to see it with Murray. It's something very different from anything he's had before. Anxious to see how the running game works and anxious about what his future is going to be. Personally, I think that when you have a coach that reaches a certain level, that you take a very different approach from a coach that's on a hot seat, and O'Connell reaches that certain level for me. But, there are realities of the NFL, and I think everyone is kind of anxious to see if those realities are upon us or if he can stave those off for another year with Kyler Murray. And then who the heck knows what's going to happen after that. And I think in terms of a future vibe check, that's what it really is. Like the great unknown comes after this. And really the great unknown is this season with another new quarterback and lots of potential that could be fulfilled for this team. So how about that? The vibe check. Would love to hear people in the comments with their vibe check and so forth. And our vibes are great. I think we've had a really good time this camp. We've enjoyed chatting. We've enjoyed doing these shows. We've enjoyed the sun. Some of us have gotten certain types of tans on their body from standing in the sun for too much. So it's been a good time. Thanks for hanging out a lot of times after practice here, Dane.
Yeah. Football.
All right, that's the vibe check with Dane Mizutani, the Pioneer Press. Matthew Coller back here in the studio. The show is always presented by FanDuel, and let's talk. I am very curious to find out from you guys in the chat. Vibe check. Training camp is over. We've seen everything from a quarterback competition to developing young players to strengths and weaknesses that have emerged to Kyler Murray on the practice field and ever so slightly Kyler Murray in the preseason. How are you feeling? And you can take it any way you want with a particular position or a situation or whatever it is. Throw it in the comments along with any other questions, comments that you have, and we'll have a good conversation here for the rest of the evening. And then Thursday, nothing going on, or at least we'll see. Supposed to play some golf, so that means that something could happen, but luckily close to home if we need an emergency podcast. And then Friday night, I'll be live right after the game ends. And sometimes for the third preseason game, it'll be like late in the fourth quarter, but be live for that as well. And I'm excited to break down that game, whomever might be playing quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Then cut down day is Sunday, show right after that, of course, and anything else that comes up, I will be here. So let's get into your questions, comments, thoughts, and feelings. We'll start with, Mizaki. Sorry if I ever mispronounce anybody's name. You can always tell me how it's actually pronounced. Camp vibe for the Vikings would be excited to see Kyler perform this year. Scamping Around says vibes for the season are sky high. Feels like this year's team is a sleeper. So just to start with those two, with Kyler Murray, I've always felt like people will have to see him actually play before there's going to be buy-in. And what better stage than the first 2 weeks of the season being against two of the toughest opponents the Minnesota Vikings are going to face, two of the most important games of the entire season. The at Soldier Field is always one that we're paying close attention to. And then at home against the Green Bay Packers. Talk about a way to start a season for your vibes for US Bank Stadium. But with Kyler Murray, you can't go 0-2. You can go 1-1 and still work your way through this season, but 0-2 would put you in a massive hole. So the first impression of Kyler Murray is really going to shape how people feel about him. And I think that from day one with Murray, there's been a fair amount of skepticism from Vikings fans. And I think that those who were holding out hope that JJ McCarthy would turn it around, maybe sort of getting on board a little bit now as the season starts. And I don't think that just in general, it's any fun to be the person who opens the season by saying it's never going to work. Everything's going to be terrible. The quarterback stinks. Maybe you're that person. I understand if you've been hardened over many, many years, but it is football. And I think we're all excited to see it get back into action. But if folks see Kyler Murray, because training camp only has so many highlights, so many tweets that are out there from fan videos and team hype videos and everything else. But if you see him come out and perform well in those first couple games, I think that there will be a very large percentage of the fan base who is perfectly fine with getting on board with a very talented quarterback and a talented offense and a chance to go chase the NFC North. But the first impression is going to matter a lot for Kyler Murray. I think it can be hard for some people right now because it still is conceptual. You've seen him drive one time down the field. That's it. Make one third down conversion to Jordan Addison in the preseason and then get put on ice. So until it becomes more than an idea, more than a camp report, more than a concept, more than a feature story, which of course I'm working on another one about Kyler Murray, until it's that, I think that a lot of people are fair to be a little bit skeptical or more of let's see him prove it to us. But as far as like the season, this sky high going into the season, I think one of the big things is that they did not have any potholes that they hit along the way in training camp. And I know there's a couple weeks left, anything can happen, but in terms of the actual training camp portion of the schedule from July, whatever it was, 28th until August 26th, that is training camp, almost nothing went wrong outside of Jamal Adams' injury. And I don't want to not take that seriously because that was really crushing to see that happen to Jamal Adams, and just such a first-class guy from when we covered him, and it felt like he was having a serious impact on the organization right away with where he's been in his career and his effort and the veteran savvy and all that stuff. And it was maybe going to be a cool story. but instead, he gets hurt. That is not great. But the rest of the roster staying healthy, not having any issues, not having players just totally fall well short of expectations during training camp. I guess Caleb Banks would be the closest to that, but I think we all knew there was going to be patience required. I think maybe a little more than I expected, but there hasn't been a, wow, Dallas Turner looks out of shape or something. Like there hasn't been one of those, wow, what a catastrophe for this team, like there have been in other preseasons and training camps where things did go wrong. I mean, 2021, the head coach is fighting with half of his players, including his starting quarterback, and then they get Irv Smith hurt. Like those vibes were not good. And then you go back to 2018, offensive linemen are dropping like flies. And one practice, Brian O'Neill's playing guard out of nowhere because they don't know what to do with so many injuries and their offensive line and the Tony Sperano passing away. I mean, like these things have not happened to the Vikings during this camp, which is probably one of the best case scenarios. Jim, thank you so much, my friend, for the super chat. Really appreciate it, man. I see you on one show and then I see you on another show. You are a very generous man, and appreciate all of you who are, here at 9:00 at night with a couple weeks to go in the season, excited in some way or another about what's about to happen with football. So appreciate all of you joining. JP says, we're all tired of the McCarthy situation. He's a great guy that had potential, but doesn't look like it'll work out with us. And the more we hear about it, the more tiring it is. Just hope we can move on. And I don't think that you're the only one. I mean, as KOC is talking about it today, I felt like you could feel a little of the exasperation. You could feel it last year with McCarthy and another injury, another ankle, another missed practice, another missed opportunity for development for JJ McCarthy. It's like, where do you kind of just draw the line of this isn't really working? Another touchdown missed because he overthrows somebody, another, right? And it hasn't been all bad for JJ McCarthy for his training camp. And I don't want to make it seem like where we've arrived at is he did nothing good. He was never made a good throw in his life. Like that is not true at all. In fact, he made a good throw yesterday in 7-on-7s. He made good throws during the workout with the Baltimore Ravens. He had a great throw at the end of the first day for a Miles Price touchdown. But there are certain job qualifications now that we've reached this point where that discussion about him as a starter is over. He is a backup quarterback. And the qualifications would be you have to be trusted. And you also have to be a plus contributor, not on the field. So what are you bringing to the team not on the field? And we've also kind of reached the point too where this is year 3 and he's this young and he's only played this much and this and everything else. It's like, well, but if the same things are happening from day 1 to year 3 with being slow with the reads or being inaccurate or holding on to the ball too much and taking too big of hits, I mean, when do you decide as a team that this just isn't going to happen? And maybe when he's 27 or 28, he totally proves you wrong, but it feels like it's that far away. And then the injury thing, he really truly needs a year behind the scenes of just practicing and not being injured because he has not been able to make progress through all the reps that have been missed over the years. But I agree with you that this would be the date or, if something happens when he's traded or when the move is made official, whatever it is. But the end of training camp, he's not the starting quarterback. Kyler Murray is. And whatever decision happens at backup, it's not going to be a good scene if your team has to go to their backup anytime soon across the entire NFL. There's no team that's looking at their backup being like, dude, we're great. What are you talking about? And I would toss the Vikings also into that situation. So the focus should shift to Kyler Murray's the starting quarterback. How good can he be? How much can they do to support him? How much, can he prove people wrong from what happened in Arizona and all that sort of stuff? Like that, he's the starter. I don't know of any other team, any other media, any other fan base that is here only a couple weeks before the start of the season that's still rambling on this much about QB2 or QB3. But just the fact that it was another instance today and KOC not saying that JJ McCarthy was the backup quarterback, kind of points us in a certain direction. And now it's just up to whether there's another team that wants him, whether they think that they should just stick with him. And maybe it's QB2, maybe it's QB3. That's what we don't know yet. And it's kind of the last thing to find out before we move on from that decision or move on from that conversation. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, throughout this entire time, I've kind of maintained hey, it doesn't look that bad in training camp. There's no reason to get rid of him. Just stick with him. Stick with him as the backup quarterback. If Murray gets hurt for a long period of time, you could find out what you have and everything else. But the latest injury, I have to be honest, it kind of just pushed me over. Okay. I mean, what else can you really do here? You can't trust someone to put them in for even 2 preseason games without coming out of it with an injury that forces them to miss camp. And I know injuries are not his fault, but hits are something you can protect yourself. And yeah, there's a guy winning off the edge. Well, you know that, right? I mean, this is the studies that all say that quarterback sack rate has a lot to do with the actual quarterback. This was put out there not too long ago by Ryan Pagnetti, who was a analytics coach or analytics. I don't know. I guess, do they call it analytics coach? Worked analytics for the Philadelphia Eagles, for the Raiders. And he's started making content now with Nick Underhill and doing a podcast and so forth. He's out of the NFL now. And that was one of the things that he was talking about, sack rate, which PFF had found as well. It does connect directly to the quarterback. And I would go with quarterback hits as well. Like you hang in and you try to make a play and you take another hit. It's like, well, where is this getting different from what it's been? So that's where I stand now. I think it has pushed me a little bit in one direction after listening to KOC talk about it today and seeing the fact that he wasn't able to practice. But I mean, I guess it wouldn't be shocking if he played against the Broncos, played totally fine, and was QB2. That could still happen. It just, if we're doing a vibe check on that situation, it feels much more like Carson Wentz for the backup. Joker, what the Vikings managed to pull off this offseason through all the turmoil is impressive and fortunate, but that only matters because K1 makes us not screwed at quarterback. Fortuitous is the best word. There is no question about that, my friend, because if they were going into this with Joe Flacco or Tyrod Taylor and JJ McCarthy and Carson Wentz, it would be Browns-ish. That's how it would feel. Not quite with the bad weapons and bad probably coaching and Deshaun Watson and all that whole stuff off the field and everything else. Not with that, but as in like bleak. It would feel bleak. Kyler Murray coming in for $1 million, which means they didn't have to hack up the roster in order to have him. He's basically getting the same as like their punt gunner. But not having to hack up the roster and have Kyler Murray and be able to add someone like Jawan Jennings to be able to extend Brian O'Neill, which I know helped the immediate cap, but you get the point. Like they didn't have to get rid of Hawkinson. They didn't have to get rid of other players whose contracts are fairly expensive still. That was a fortuitous bounce that the Arizona Cardinals didn't decide, hey, Kyler, you're under contract. We're going to keep playing it out. They decided, we're going to sink to the bottom and try to go for a full rebuild. That is very lucky for the Vikings. And I think day after day, as we're nitpicking on throwaways or sacks or whatever else, it's been a reminder of what a pro quarterback looks like. I don't think Kyler Murray will be perfect throwing the football. I think there will be miscues. I think there will be times he tries to anticipate and throws an interception because he can't see the field or because he, has to throw the ball way out in front of wide receivers and time it really well. And we've seen that. But in comparison to what it looked like last year, it is vastly, vastly better. And what I would say about Kyler is he gives him a chance. He gives them a chance to be right about a lot of things, to be right about Jawan Jennings, to be right about the running game playing off of Kyler Murray, to be right about the defense and actually make it pay off, unlike last year. So what they pulled off this offseason was both very good and lucky. And I also think that Rob Brzezinski deserves a ton of credit because waiting out free agency to get Jawan Jennings, who had an awesome slant today where he ran after the catch. I mean, he was so open, they counted the yards after catch. He had a slant today where he ran after catch like 30 yards. I mean, he's good. He is a good player. They would not have been able to get him if they had tried to dip into the wide receiver market early on, but they patiently waited it out. They had, from what I could tell, I mean, we'll see on the defensive tackles, but everybody else in this draft has been impressive so far. I think Golday is going to be a really good player. Demings, I think, has a chance to start in the future as a 5th rounder. I think we're going to see for sure Bredesen right away, and Orange we're going to see, I think, a fair amount of right away. So, and we'll see on like Jacoby Thomas. He's got to get healthy. Caleb Tiernan is probably not quite ready for this and needs development, but it's a good draft class that provides some depth. Like they did a lot of stuff that worked out well. They convinced TJ Hawkinson to come back. He's looked good in camp. So they have put themselves in a position because of their offseason to potentially compete. But, we know this, that there's a new GM who's going to want to shape this thing in his own vision going forward. So if they don't compete the way we expect, then, there could be serious changes. Jay says, my camp vibe is we don't have enough edge depth and safety that could haunt the Vikings during the season. And, I've tried to decide whether like we've gotten to the point where like there's nothing left to talk about at camp. So we kind of just pick away at these same issues over and over again, where it's like, one more outside linebacker, one more outside linebacker, one more outside linebacker. I wonder about what they think internally with the way Batty's played, but also their other options at edge rusher should Dallas Turner get hurt. And Eric Wilson came off the edge a lot last year. Now he's not a pure pass rusher, but in a 3-4 system, you can finagle that for a game or two if you need to rush from different ways. And you still got Van Ginkel on the team. And then Golday has shown that he can rush off the edge as well. And when you're playing that 3-4 type of front, this is kind of one of the things that you can do is usually those great 3-4 defenses, they would have like a Greg Lloyd, a Lamar Lathan, somebody that just rush the passer, a Kevin Green, Derek Thomas, that's what they would do. But the other way to do it would be the Patriot way, where they didn't always have that. They had guys like Jamie Collins, Willie McGinnis, who they did rush the passer a lot, but they didn't rush the passer all the time. And so they would have the two guys overhanging there, and they would have defensive tackles. I guess Richard Seymour was a guy who rushed all the time, but they would have the defensive ends, 3-4 DEs, and those guys would just try to rush in a way to create lanes for blitzers, and you never knew exactly who was going to come at the quarterback. So there are ways to deal with that. But I'm not saying that anybody's wrong about adding an outside linebacker. I'm not so sure that like that's going to be the thing that haunts them for the entire season. Of course, health is going to be an issue, but I think you do have options if Van Ginkel got hurt to replace him. You would just like to have one if Dallas Turner went down. Safety is one that could haunt them during the season. I agree. That's the one I have the least confidence in outside of, I think Metellus knows what he's doing. We looked at those numbers last year that when he was actually playing deep safety, he did not have bad games last year. So I think he does know how to do that. But that's a big question when you have a UDFA taking first team reps for sure. Jim, after the game Friday, will the team be in rest and recovery mode? Just meetings, walkthroughs, and weight room? No, they're going to continue to practice. So it's a little bit uncomfortable. They come back on Friday really late from Denver, and then they have to make decisions very fast before cut down day on Sunday. So it's going to be a rough ride for them. Get back that early in the morning and then probably right back into the office. But in terms of like what happens between now and then, they will still be practicing. It's just that when training camp comes to an end officially, that's when it closes to the media. So they will have closed practices next week after they cut the roster down. There will be a press conference with Nolan Teasley, Kevin O'Connell to talk about cut down day. I don't know which day that's going to be. Of course, I'll be out there and have a full breakdown of that. And then they start practicing behind the scenes. We come back the Wednesday before the game to go to open locker rooms, go to the first few minutes of practice and stuff like that, go to press conferences, and then we get into our usual mode. But they'll be practicing. It's not just going to be the meetings and recovery. Like they'll start really implementing the game plan, which is why the practices close, because that's when they start doing the actual game plan. Here are the plays we are putting in to go against the Green Bay Packers. So that's kind of why. Dustin says these two are the only ones to think Murray has been good. I don't think that that's true at all, Dustin. I think that maybe you need to consume the media who's there every day. I think that there are other podcasts and other people who cover the team who have thought that Kyler Murray has been good overall, but I didn't say that Kyler Murray has been Steve Young. What I said, I believe I used the word solid. And the reason that I use all the numbers and all that sort of stuff, one of the reasons that I do that is because then I can refer back to those numbers and say, all right, well, here is sort of my proof that Kyler Murray has been solid. And like a day like today is an example. A lot of positive throws, some negative throws, fairly high completion percentage. And I've tracked it through the entire training camp. And he's got way more positive throws than negative. He has several really excellent days where the ball never hits the field. He has overall shown a quality capacity for running the offense. But I would also point out that I don't recall too many perfect practices from Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold. They had some good ones, but not where they were going like 23 for 23 in a scrimmage setting like this. Absolutely not. This is always a tough practice, and I think KOC wants it to be that way as the final real ramp up before they get into weekly type of practice mode. But I don't believe that we're the only two that's saying practices that Murray has been overall solid to good. There's a lot of positives that have come out of it, and he's looked like a pro quarterback, unlike anybody else on the roster. So, I think that they're in line to maximize what they have. And I would also say that anybody who makes too much out of training camp practices also always needs to check themselves when it comes to the results, because I will go back to it. This very practice, this exact practice in 2022, Kirk Cousins threw 5 picks and then won 13 games. This exact practice. So if you think 13 for 15 for 23 is not that great or whatever, or whoever said it, he hasn't been good. I don't know. Like, I guess we're just going to have a bit of a difference of opinion on it. But when it comes to how much like it matters, I think training camp does matter. I think the vibes do matter. They have been fairly predictive, not last year, but mostly through the history of me covering this team. So I think the fact that they do come out of it without any sort of catastrophe is like a big plus, and with a quarterback who's played like a pro in camp. But I can't remember, other than Sam Bradford 2017, anybody who had like perfect practices. That didn't even happen when Kirk was here. Nani Strikes says, I just want to know how everyone feels about Kyler being a legit Vikings fan. To me, I've never heard of a quarterback come right out and admit they are a fan since childhood. It's exciting. Well, yeah, I mean, that's, when you talk about Kyler like wanting to be here and so forth. And I really think that his personality and the fact that he is more of an introverted person, I don't think anybody has made any bones about that. That he doesn't jump all over the place when they celebrate touchdowns. In fact, he threw a great one in the joint practice. Absolutely incredible touchdown to Justin Jefferson. And he ran down to greet him. And there was like, I'm here, everybody. Touchdown. There wasn't like jumping in the air. There wasn't like a Tiger Woods fist bump. I just think that that's who Kyler Murray is. And I also think that his expectation is that he makes throws like that. So he's never all that shocked when he does it. But I think that if he had way more of like if he was calling press conferences every other day and, talking all the stuff about how great if he was self-promoting and whatever, there would be more hype within Vikings fans. I just don't feel like they have gotten to know Kyler Murray very much, because he gets drafted. He has a press conference. He's had, 3, maybe 4 since, and they've mostly been centered around a quarterback competition. We haven't talked to him since and we'll probably talk to him the Wednesday before the season starts. And then it feels like, we finally get a chance to really start not talking to Kyler about a quarterback competition and talking about him as the starting quarterback. So you guys will see more of Murray, and it becomes a reality of him as your quarterback, as opposed to sort of this guy going against McCarthy behind the scenes. Rob, the vibes are higher than the Darnold season because I think Kyler is a significantly better quarterback than Sam, and he is inheriting a better roster than Sam had. Chance at the number 1 seed. Well, that is as sky high as it gets in terms of vibes go, Rob, and I appreciate the enthusiasm for the season to start. And I know that you're always an optimistic person, and I do appreciate that because it doesn't always go that way in every chat. I think when it comes to like better quarterback I don't know that at this moment you could say he's a better quarterback than what Sam Darnold became. I think you can say that he is a significantly better quarterback in his past than Darnold when he arrived here. Like, if you know the results, that he won back-to-back 14 games and played as awesome as he did in the NFC Championship, like, okay, well, Kyler hasn't done that yet in his career, and there's been inconsistency. But in terms of showing up here, Kyler has had really good years. Sam Darnold never had a complete season that was really good. There were like 5-game runs and stuff, but there was never a time where he had a 17 or 16 game season that was very good, where Murray has had 3 of those in his career, not MVP, but in the top 12 type of quarterbacks. And he's been there in the quarterback tiers article in the past and stuff like that. So Sam Darnold never was. So there is a point to be made there. And in terms of is it a better situation, better team? That's a good question, because Jawan Jennings instead of Jalen Naylor. Naylor was good in 2024. Jennings is more proven. And the offensive line, 2024 offensive line was looking pretty good until Christian Darrisaw went down. So we don't know what is going to happen with health once we get into the regular season. I think it's similar. Maybe the defense was a little more sound, but there were still questions at certain positions. Harrison Smith being as good as he was in 24 and currently not on the football team would be a difference, but I think it's pretty close. I do think it's pretty close in terms of the overall talent around the quarterback. Mike says, vibes are cautiously optimistic. Mike, I'm so proud of you, because sometimes you don't seem cautiously optimistic, but and I appreciate that as well, that we try to cover a lot of different, angles on every story. So I do appreciate that, but I didn't think you were going to say cautiously optimistic. KOC has done everything to signal commitment to the run and winning ugly when necessary. Biggest concern is interior O-line, maybe mitigated by Kyler's mobility. And I think it's really interior O-line at the center position. Right now, my confidence is pretty good in the guard position. I really like what I've seen from Will Fries in this camp, and I really like what I've seen from Donovan Jackson. As always, the caveats, like they have to do it in the games, but Jackson's development, you could see it with how much work he's put in, the strength that he's gained. I mean, you know when it's year 1 to year 2 for a guy who really cares about it, and you see that from him. And I buy into the idea that Will Fries last year was held back quite a bit by that injury and still had an okay year. He was still an average guard. Average you can get away with. If it's you get into the Ed Ingram pass blocking and so forth, then you can't. The center position remains a wild card. No question about it. Joker says it's been 6+ months of anticipating Kyler Murray, eagerly awaiting the results. It feels good to be here because it is a long offseason in football. And there are points in the offseason where I'm like, okay, is this ever going to arrive? Are we ever going to see real football? And it is right around the corner now. So yeah, Kyler Murray, like he at first is sort of a concept, an idea. We were talking about him way back in January of like, is this a potential idea? Could he get cut by the Cardinals? And then it happens. And then is Kyler coming? Or are they going to get Derek Carr, which for a minute there I thought was going to happen. And it kind of sounded like Derek Carr wanted that to happen. And then, okay, that's not happening. Kyler's coming. And then it's like OTAs. And we're already in that competition mode of OTAs and minicamp. So if there was going to be any like hype around Kyler, it was overshadowed by, well, which quarterback looked better in OTAs and minicamp and then so forth. And so I also think the opportunity for fans to really buy into Kyler Murray, and I'm not saying you have to, I'm saying that, most of the conversation out there has just been about a competition. It's been about the guy who's the backup quarterback now, the draft pick, what happened, whose fault was it? And all of that's been, pretty exhausting, but also hasn't given people an opportunity to really focus on, well, what could Kyler Murray do in this offense? What will they do around him? All those typical storylines that you would have for a new quarterback that were not there as much because of the quarterback competition. Okay. CJ Ham is the man, says vibe check for the fullbacks. I got to tell you, I said it to Rob Brzezinski the other day. I walked by him and I was like, can we get Max Bredesen a neck roll? I'm ready to give him a neck roll. Max Bredesen, the amount of stuff that they're doing with him has been really interesting to watch. Like, he's out there a lot. He's going in motion. He's moving around. He's in different places. He can catch the ball. Like, I think he could play. I'm going to have to get CJ Ham's take on that. Maybe we'll just get CJ on the show at some point to just break down Max Bredesen in the season. But I think that's going to work. I do. So the vibes are very, very good for CJ Ham's replacement, Max Bredesen. Truly, I'm not even like just doing the like I love fullbacks thing, because you guys know I love fullbacks, but he really looks like the part. Mike says running back depth scares me a little bit given Mason can't pass block and Jones. It's hard to see more than 10 healthy games. Kyler has the ability to salvage a few games. The running back depth is a thing I kind of bounce back and forth on, because it's a little bit like outside linebacker depth, where you go, yeah, I mean, I just don't know how many teams have a like great third or fourth or fifth outside linebacker that's ready to go and can get 10 sacks. And if they had that, they probably, make the Super Bowl. I mean, if you like, that's like Seattle, they had, all those pass rushers flying in there and so forth. And the same thing goes for RB3. Like, I don't know how many teams have an RB3 that you would say, oh man, like that guy's incredible. Not many teams have that. And Claiborne has gotten a lot of practice. He definitely has. And he has looked like he knows what to do. Just in preseason, he hasn't looked to me like he's going to have the power and the contact balance just yet to break tackles, but he might be ready. They might feel like he's ready to play. I just think he's been a little bit like a rookie when he's gotten out there in the real games. And Xavier Scott, I think, is a reliable RB3. It's just, if you go around the league and tell me, well, remember the guy the Lions had for a long time, Craig Reynolds? That's kind of like Xavier Scott, like a special teamer, great dude. Like they love, his intelligence and he can block and he can catch the ball and he can do a lot of things. Like those guys are most RB3s in the league. Because if you're really, really good, you're probably playing. If you're Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson or Jordan Mason, like you're playing a lot. So I think that if they did get into trouble, that's where you maybe try to acquire one. And I know the Cam Akers jokes write themselves, but maybe that ends up being the case. And that's another thing in terms of vibe where, it does have me wondering about if this starts out really well, like what would they add? And I'm wondering now, will they add something in the market? Maybe not necessarily a trade, but somebody else gets let go and there's an opportunity to add to the roster. So this is also the final frontier for the roster ads and the first opportunity really for Nolan Teasley to potentially see somebody around the league that gets waived and, poach them or pick somebody up or whatever it might be. And that makes these next couple of weeks still interesting, even though, we're just kind of waiting around for stuff to happen. Nani says Vibe is ready to go. Feels like they can't wait to get out there and showcase the run game. Imagine Max Bredesen blasting through for the first touchdown. It does feel that way. And that's always hard because you could say in 32 NFL cities, the players are talking up whatever, but it really isn't that way. It really isn't every training camp that we hear players just super excited about this or that or the other thing. Like sometimes if you ask about whatever it might be, there might be more of like just like a hesitancy, on a certain type of play. There might be like or a certain type of situation or scheme or whatever, or scenario with the depth chart where it's like, yeah, I mean, we're coming along and, we need some work there. This has been genuine excitement from Christian Darrisaw, from the offensive line, and even from KOC. So they do have to show that on the field, but it's something that, at least from trying to judge it at this point, seems real. And also we do see it. Like we see, this is a different run game than they've had before. Like that you can definitely see. Joker, can Thorson steal Mr. Mankato? Any dark horse players that can win if they make this team? Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know that anyone could take it from Jacob Thomas. At this moment, Jacob Thomas is Mr. freaking Mankato. And now that training camp is over, I think that the Mr. Mankato vote officially should be after we see who makes the team. But I mean, he's on the team. So, at least I think it would be shocking if he wasn't. I guess if they made some sort of move or I don't know. I mean, if Harrison Smith comes back, but I just think they make room for him because he's played so well. That is a guy who could get poached. And when Flores is up there crediting the scout who found him, you're like, okay, they are in on this guy. Not that our eyes couldn't tell us that. Anyway, when you go from UDFA at James Madison to making the team, you are Mr. Mankato. Is there anybody else? I mean, Demings we've already kind of covered and has been really good and exciting player. Is there anybody else who could kind of sneak up and shock us? I really don't think so. I don't think there's like a wide receiver who could do enough in this last game to go, oh my gosh, like Dylan Bell would be probably the guy. Maybe he's that guy. Maybe if Dylan Bell was so good in the last preseason game, he gets 10 catches for 120 yards and returns a kick for a touchdown or something. Okay, well, that might be a shocking come from out of nowhere. But even then, that couldn't top Jacob Thomas because, I mean, Dylan Bell went to Georgia. James Madison, that's totally different. Bumbaclat, what's your gut feeling on what will happen to JJ? Gut feeling. Gut feeling is probably just QB3. But if McCarthy is problematic in any way behind the scenes, in terms of his relationship with Kyler or whatever else, like whatever else it is, you got to make up fast because now you're on the same team trying to win. You're not competing against each other anymore. You lost. It's his job. Now you got to be his teammate. If you're not going to, as Kevin O'Connell said, attempt to be a good teammate, then they should trade him because to me, that says a lot more. And I do not know this. I do not know what's going on. They did not ask me to come attend a quarterback meeting. They let Randy Moss into the wide receiver meeting, but not me into the quarterback meeting. Weird. But so I don't know what that's been like for them. I don't know how coachable he's been since he lost the competition or what he's being asked to do or whatever else. But if he is not being a good teammate, then that's a pretty easy answer for me. Because you've performed like a guy that's not going to work out. You've gotten injured like a guy who's not going to work out. You haven't developed all that much. And then you're going to be like a bad teammate. Like, okay, well, perfectly fine with moving on at that point. Because if you're not going to be a good teammate, I don't know what team is going to have a great experience with you. But if he is being a good teammate, then I would keep him as probably quarterback 3. I just could not trust him at this moment with running the offense on time and hitting open wide receivers, which I think at least Carson Wentz could do one of those two things. Rob's seen enough, too many great games from Kyler playing for the Cards. I'd be stunned if he wasn't able to play even better with this Vikings roster. And that's the logic right there. Like, that's how you get talked into this. And most folks that I've talked to, I was asking Emily Leiker the other day, we talked to Dane about it and everybody else. I mean, most people who are watching the training camp have it at 10-11 wins. Had Seifert on the show the other day. Not a lot's changed since then. That's kind of where he was at. So there's a pretty good consensus about what this can be. But the best argument for this team being good is that Kyler was able to go 8-9. And even if we talk about like his last 15, well, let's see. No, not 15. It would be 17-5. So last 22 games with that truck fire of a franchise, he still went 10 and 14. So like hovering around 500, and they went 1-11 with Jacoby Brissett. And he was 10-14. I mean, I don't know. Like, that's a pretty compelling case, I guess. But, you know, there's a lot of varying factors, like the NFC North. And that's Madsen says Kyler's going to be a problem for the NFC North. But also, it's possible that the NFC North is a problem for Kyler. Like, it is a really, really tough division. I think the absolute best case is if this guy could be a top 12 quarterback and go 8-9 with that team, that with this team, he should be able to do more than that. But it's also not always apples to apples, right? Like the schedule looks easy at this moment. What happens as they go along during the season? Like there's so many different factors. Rob, I agree. Jamal Adams was great in the press conferences. His energy was absolutely amazing to be around. And it sounds like he was bringing that to the building. Like that's the saddest, that you're going to see from Brian Flores. Like he really seemed kind of heartbroken there. Son of Beavers, KOC does not want to talk about number changes anymore. You could tell that. You could definitely tell that. Like the number of things that come across the head coach's desk they can never prepare for, and you can't even imagine on a day-to-day basis. You cannot even imagine. Big Moines, he's not injured, just doesn't want to ruin any trade value. I don't know. I mean, he definitely got banged up in the game and limped off. And it sounds like KOC wants to play him in the third game. I don't know if anything that can happen is going to hurt any trade value. Anything that could happen. I mean, the injuries, I guess, if he went out there and got another injury, yeah, that could do it. But I just don't know that anything other than being out for a long period of time would change the potential trade value when everyone's seen the whole story play out, unless he absolutely lit it up against the Broncos and someone said, you know what, we might as well. Somebody who had a bad backup quarterback situation, we might as well. But I'm not even sure that the fourth rounder that the Cowboys gave up for Trey Lance could even be what the Vikings get back for him right now. Bumba Klatt, in a hypothetical with Smith returning, do you cut Tavierre Thomas or keep 7 safeties? I had Tavierre Thomas, and I like Tavierre a lot, and I think that he's a good career special teamer, but I had him on the block in my 53. I had him getting cut. I just struggled to find the space for him. I preferred to keep Samaya Vaughn, who is younger and is, I know, a UDFA, but I think he's been pretty good in this training camp. They may feel like they could get Vaughn to the practice squad, and they may feel like someone would pick up Tavierre Thomas. Maybe you do keep 7 safeties. I don't know. I guess, well, you know what, though? You know what? I may be wrong about Samaya Vaughn because Jay Ward is now considered a corner. He is considered a nickel. That's what Brian Flores said the other day. So maybe it would be considering keeping like 6 safeties and 5 corners. And then you have 6 defensive linemen. So how many is that? We would have 6 and 5 is 11, 16. And then you're trying to get to 25. So 5 and 4. Yeah. I mean, you can make it work. 5, would you'd have 4 inside linebackers, 5 outside linebackers, or there's a couple of kind of slash guys. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting if Harrison Smith did come back. It's going to be interesting just in general, but that may hurt my odds of being right about Samaya Vaughn if they're now considering Jay Ward a corner. Did not know that for sure until the other day. I thought he was kind of like a box safety, big nickel, but now it's kind of confirmed. Jim, my vibes for this season is the Vikings will shock a lot of NFL fans with the number of wins. Not saying if it's wins or losses, but we will be shocked. Yeah, that does happen. How many times have you ever been shocked by the number of losses by the Vikings? 2010, maybe 2018, but I wasn't shocked. I don't think 8-1. Is that what they were? No, 8-7-1. I don't think 8-7-1 was shocking. I think it was surprising, but not shocking. Those are 2 different things. When was the last time? I mean, I don't know that I've ever been shocked by a final result since I've covered the team, like the number of losses. 2020, not that shocking. They revamped the whole team. I mean, I would have thought they would have been better in 2023, but even then we were talking about it as a reset year, and then they had the injuries. Probably last year is the most surprising. I would not have expected that, but I think I picked 10 or 11 games last year, and they ended up with 9, so it's not that far away. I wonder when was it actually like 2013 is probably the last time. I mean, going 5-12, that was, I'm guessing, not expected here. I should remind you of the FanDuel question of the day, by the way, which is the Vikings have moved up a little bit on FanDuel to plus 138 to make the playoffs, sort of right on the cusp there. Has anything changed in your opinion about the team's potential based on training camp being over? And what are your vibes? That is the question of the day, FanDuel question of the day. And also want to remind you guys of my friends over at Brooklyn Betting. I know that you've become quite aware of my back issues and just how that's been a struggle for me, but I can't tell you how much a mattress can turn things around. So if you have some of those issues as well, certainly look to your mattress as a place that might be able to help you out. Got the Aurora Lux mattress from Brooklyn Betting. It's been a life changer. And the biggest thing is, even though, it was cost effective, it is also just built so well. It's built right here in the USA, and they, build it. It felt like just for me. It was solid, intentional. It feels like something that's going to last. Didn't feel like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be fine for a little while and then turn into a hammock. Like really, really quality build. And we switched just because of, struggling a lot with getting to sleep. But now the spine feels great. Wake up with a ton of energy. Look where we are. It's almost 9:30 at night. Been doing a lot of stuff all day, covering practice, still ton of energy. And that's only because I got great sleep last night. So what I like about Brooklyn Bedding too is you got exactly what we wanted. They offer mattresses for every sleep style, every size. And you could get exactly what you want as well. So go over to brooklynbedding.com and use the promo code PURPLE for 30% off. That is brooklynbedding.com, 30% off with the promo code PURPLE. Okay, let's get back to your thoughts. And we'll roll on for a little bit. Feels like we're getting a lot of good comments and questions here from your vibes. Joker, have you watched any of Jacob Roberts in the CFL? I mean, if you were grinding CFL tape, I am impressed. I have not seen a Jacob Roberts CFL tape, but unless there's a different Jacob Roberts, you mean the one on the Vikings, right? He's been good, man. He's a guy that I've had as a question mark. Could he actually make the team? Because he has played very well, very physically on special teams. Like, I wouldn't be that shocked if he ended up making the team. Big Moinas. So the quarterback whisperer can't salvage JJ, who would have guessed. Look, there's fair and there's unfair. Kevin O'Connell saying organizations fail quarterbacks more than quarterbacks fail organizations did not mean all quarterbacks every single time. And yeah, I know it's going to get thrown in his face, but I also don't think that he's terribly wrong. I mean, I think that there's a lot of organizations who have failed a lot of quarterbacks. I just don't think this is one of them. And it doesn't mean every single time. And when it comes to like salvaging, my question is, what else was supposed to happen? What else was a coach supposed to do? And I think a lot of people would just keep going back to like, oh, well, they should have just played him more. They should have just adjusted the offense. They should have just this, and the other thing. And it's like, but we're still here with him sitting on the sideline for an injury after missing a bunch of passes that were wide open because they're inaccurate. And it's like, what more was supposed to happen there? I mean, I think O'Connell believed in him, poured into him, did as much as he could to train and develop him, gave him Josh McCown, the best type of journeyman quarterback coach that he could have asked for. They gave him Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, everything. I mean, I don't know, like a perfect offensive line last year would have been great, but in terms of the development, what else was supposed to happen there? Sometimes it doesn't work out. And that is the reality of the NFL. The same for Kyle Shanahan. You could find any coach in the league who's known as a quarterback whisperer, which we just shouldn't even do. How about, the book. I love this book, by the way. Bruce Arians' book. It is great. It is legitimately great. Bruce Arians' book. It's called Quarterback Whisperer. And he writes about Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Carson Palmer, and Ben Roethlisberger. And he tells all the stories of those guys. Doesn't write a chapter on Jameis Winston. I mean, that's somebody who coached all the best of the best, but no one's a miracle worker. I don't know. And you also can't make somebody healthy. Who are the wide receivers 3, 4, and 5? Well, 3 is Juwan Jennings. No question about that. 4 and 5 are going to be Ty Felton and Miles Price. It's pretty well locked in. And Dylan Bell, I think, would be the first man up from the practice squad. If not Jay Sean Jones, but it won't be in the first 3 weeks. I don't know if they keep Jay Sean Jones. He's going to be suspended for those first couple weeks. He's been kind of a good practice squad soldier for them, knows the offense, but I'm not sure. They would probably need someone that they could trust, or it could be Dante Fleming who goes on the practice squad. I am curious just if they end up with how many wide receivers on the practice squad, like maybe 3 more, probably. LeBron Solo was injured on one of the many times he was hit, which is better than a non-contact injury. I suppose so. Also, it doesn't seem that serious, I think. I think you're just being unfair if you think that the coaches can just correct stuff. Here's the reality of the National Football League. The coaches coach to win football games, and they try their best to develop people. And I think that in certain instances with certain positions, it's a lot easier than others. If you have a defensive tackle, for example, like Caleb Banks, I think that that's where you can, every day you're drilling certain stuff and you're developing him in the classroom. And over a couple of years, you should see gains and gains and gains. Dallas Turner is a good example of this as well. But when it comes to a quarterback, there are fatal flaws. In fact, really though, let's just say this for every position. There are fatal flaws. Laquan Treadwell couldn't get open. And I know he's still in the league and love that for him, but like he couldn't get open. And if you can't get open, you can't be a star wide receiver. I think they thought he would be able to get open. What coach was supposed to do something with that? What coach is, I'll teach him a better route, I guess. Like that's not how it really works. Not at the NFL level. You have to develop yourself for one. And there are flaws that are just not going to work in the National Football League. There are some things that if you have problem X, Y, or Z, accuracy, timing, processing, these are things that are catastrophic. So they haven't been able to change because those are things that you can't usually change. Dirty Mike, yeah, won't tolerate the Joe Flacco slander. Yeah, I know. I did say what would have been different if they had a different backup quarterback, if it was Joe Flacco, but it's not slander on Flacco. I just don't think maybe they would have made the playoffs. Saints fans is why didn't you guys draft Bo Nix? He would be the MVP on the Vikings with Justin Jefferson. I think truly that's a great question. Although I'm guessing a Saints fan in my chat's not going to be too popular. Vikings fans don't love the Saints, but you do ask a good question. My theory on that, and it will never be said, like Kevin O'Connell's never going to come out and say, this is why I didn't draft Bo Nix. But if I had to guess, the age gap and how they played, like JJ McCarthy did throw the ball downfield a lot in Michigan. He was not a short pass guy. Like the way that they ran their offense was play actions down the field and then third downs. Hey, go get us a first down with your arm or scramble. And McCarthy made a lot of good throws down the field. And I think that they saw the downfield passing and Nix was kind of a screen pass, bubble screen, quick slant guy. And I think they also saw the arm strength and said, if we can harness this, because he throws the absolute bleep out of the ball. We know that. If we can harness this, he can throw into the tight windows, those in-breaking routes that are between linebackers and so forth. I mean, like it's just a lot of talent there. And I think that's clear. I mean, he's a 5-star recruit. He goes to Michigan. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. And I think with Bo Nix, though he was, I think, a high recruit as well, it was a little more of, does he have some limitations and will he ever have a higher ceiling? Now, the answer is clearly, yeah, it's turned out to be way better than JJ McCarthy under circumstances that were not as good. Their receivers are not as good. Their offensive line is pretty good, but they have no run game whatsoever. So like it's been very good for him under one of the best coaches. Again, earmuffs everybody, but like Sean Payton's a really good coach. It's been a good situation for him and he was way more experienced and he was way more ready for it. And there was a learning curve for him as well. And it still, may eventually get there for McCarthy because think about like Bo Nix was still a bad, inaccurate Auburn quarterback at the same age. So it's not like you should totally dismiss the chance that it could work out. But I think that's why that there were just a lot of NFL style throws from McCarthy, the type of arm strength that they take to make those throws, but you really don't know how it's going to work out until you get the guy. You really don't. And that goes for everybody. Mizaki says, as a Cardinals fan, y'all are welcome for our incompetence. Hope Kyler rocks it this year. I have not had anyone say to me who is a Cardinals follower, Kyler thinks he's going to blow up your franchise. I mean, for whatever that's worth, right? I don't know what that's worth, but like, I'm sure that Mizaki watched a lot of Cardinals football and it is a lot of incompetence, I'm sorry to say, with the Arizona Cardinals. It's just interesting because with some players, it's don't let the door hit you on the way out. And it hasn't been that way from my interactions with Cardinals fans. Son of Beavers, do you think signing Jonathan Harris puts Isaiah Loudermilk on the roster bubble? I always kind of had him on the roster bubble. I think they need a guy to play in the game, and he was here before and may know what to do. I don't know if he's got a chance to actually make the team. That would be very surprising if he just sort of showed up here and then was like on the 53. Loudermilk is the hardest one to figure out for me, but I also think that you can cut Loudermilk and sign him to the practice squad. I don't know how many offers are going to be there for someone like that. Scamping Around was still on the rookie quarterback track with Murray. Right, they were able to keep together the team they believed would compete for a Super Bowl because of Kyler Murray. Otherwise, this would be totally different. The Braun Solo, man, I feel like you're just going to have to get over it a little bit with Kyler. Like, he's your quarterback. You're just going to have to get over it. Like, I think that a lot of people are who didn't want that to happen. Like, they're getting over it. Like, he's the quarterback to start the season and so forth. Like, kind of gripping onto, I hate my starting quarterback for my team it's a hard place to be unless you're Cleveland. They're very used to it. But when the guy's this good, I think that you can at least give it a chance. It feels like all offseason you haven't wanted to, but now we're at the end of it and the games are actually going to start. I mean, are you going to watch the games with like clenched fists and gritted teeth? Like, I don't know. I mean, I think that from what I've seen in training camp, he's earned the right for everybody to see what happens. It isn't a situation where we've watched him in training camp and gone, oh boy, this is going to be bad. It's been much more like, all right, he's played well enough to reach a certain bar that has potential to be good with this team. I can't say for sure it's going to be, but he was by far the best option. He was by far the better quarterback, in my opinion, and my tracking data throughout training camp. And since he's gotten the job, he's been very good in practice, solid in the joint practices. I wouldn't say megastar, but he didn't, turn the ball over and had a couple of big time plays and stuff. And then today played pretty well. It's like, I mean, I think for some folks, it is time to just maybe get over the whole thing with McCarthy and Murray's your quarterback and like blank slate it. That's how I would approach it. Like blank slate, let's see what happens. And if it goes bad, we'll criticize that. And if it goes well, then we'll talk about that. Just another dude said, how serious are rumors that we might straight up cut McCarthy? It could be in the cards. I mean, there's nothing that you can really say is not possible. Now, financially, you would much rather trade him, but that also might be part of the problem is that, where he's at, first round draft pick, top 10 pick, like it costs some money to take on JJ McCarthy. And if no one's doing it to make him a starter and no one got hurt in training camp, there's not an injured quarterback across the NFL. I mean, maybe Atlanta would do it possibly because it sounds like they might just straight up cut Tua. Like he's been so bad that there's reports of like they couldn't possibly play that guy. So that's not good. And everybody who didn't get Jack Strand should have got Jack Strand. Looked pretty good at Atlanta. I know some of you guys were talking about him in the draft. It's like, well, but how serious? I mean, it could happen. I don't want to count anything out. Would it be a total shocker if they just said, all right, JJ, go find a new home. We're going to bring in Cooper Rush? No, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever. Bass Pundit, good to meet you. Says, vibe check, revving a muscle car engine with a smile on my face. Football is a weird game that can humble you quickly, but feeling really good about the team's outlook right now. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's where a lot of people have gotten to, because if you get day after day of updates from training camp, this guy's injured, this guy's underperforming, this guy's not taking the next step. Like that makes it hard to get ready for week one for fans. I think that hasn't been this camp. It has actually been the quietest training camp. There hasn't been any controversy, and I wouldn't call the quarterback competition controversial. It happened, but I wouldn't call it controversial. There hasn't been issues with players or contract holdouts or just anything that really gets in the way. And there is a big knock on wood there for me, but anything that really gets in the way of like the vibes. Well, it's actually over. So just during the training camp period, so I think that there's reason to feel that way. And it's definitely like start your engines type of feeling for sure. After doing, I don't know, how many podcasts have I done since the beginning of the offseason? I think we all can't wait for that. Burrito Bill, when is Hitman coming back? If he's going to, then it's got to be soon. And if he's going to play the whole season, then it's got to be soon. So maybe you do get to a point where it's like on Monday or something. I don't know when they're going to have their press conference. Usually Monday or Tuesday, probably Tuesday. They'll have their press conference after cut down day, kind of let the dust settle there. Monday or Tuesday, whichever it is. That'd be a heck of a time to announce, hey, by the way, just want to let you guys know, Harrison Smith's coming back. I mean, I don't know, but I'm not sure. It was just, there was more of a, like Kevin O'Connell, I'm letting y'all know I want Harrison Smith back on this football team. And that may be inspiring to Harrison, depending on how he actually feels. That's going to be a big thing. Tocino, is that it? Would you trade McCarthy for Shadur Sanders? I probably would not. And that's just because I'm not really a believer in Shadur Sanders. Nothing personal, but watching him play last year, like these quarterbacks from the quarterback tiers ranked 34th and 35th. I would rather do it for Anthony Richardson if they were going to do it that way, because that's a first round draft pick who could still have potential, who didn't play much because he was hurt. But, I think that Richardson has a running element that is very, very real that JJ McCarthy doesn't. It's a swap that I'd be more willing to do than someone like Shadur Sanders, where I just don't see the upside for him, and it comes along with a circus. Not his fault, but it comes along with the circus. Dylan says would trade McCarthy for a 6-7 swap. That might be what they have to do if that happens. Purple Insider has no guarantees. I know, and I've tried not to just say that after everything, but it's like, well, this is going well and this is going well. And then I don't want it to sound like I'm telling you, oh my gosh, they're going to win 15 games. But it's like a lot of the things that they wanted to accomplish or that we had questions about have actually turned out pretty good during training camp, but no guarantees. So you're right. There is no guarantees. Anyway, let's see if we got any more good questions here, but I think it's been a really good conversation. Let's see. JP says Teasley seems mysterious and the opposite of Kwesi, open and talkative. Also curious how he handles the analytics. Yeah, I mean, I think I've got a good sense for how he's going to handle the analytics. They brought in an excellent reputation guy, Andrew Healy, as their assistant GM. So he's one that was in Football Outsiders as a writer and was a math professor and has worked his way up. I mean, what a cool story that is for Andrew Healy. But just the other people that I've talked to in the analytics space about him, he has a very, very good reputation. So they're going to use it. And I think it's going to be layered, and layered in a process way. Like this is, so I had Andrew Brand on the show the other day. I hope you guys got to see it because Nolan Teasley is a descendant of the Ron Wolf tree in a way. Like Ron Wolf, Ted Thompson, the Packers front office, John Schneider takes the process over to Seattle. That's where Nolan Teasley comes from. And what he said basically is everyone stays in their lane and they have a process and that's the way they do it and that's the way they stick to it. And with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, I never felt that. I felt like it was very haphazard. It was, well, I know this isn't the right analytics thing to do, but we did it anyway. It's like, okay. Or, well, I wasn't really sure. So who knows? And look, I think some of the talk about Kwesi can go too far. And some of his draft picks are actually looking pretty darn good in this training camp because they had time to develop. I did see Mekhi Blackman got cut by the Indianapolis Colts, but which I don't think that I don't know. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they'd be looking at that. But I think some of the Kwesi stuff was overstated, but I also think that there wasn't like a clear principle of this is how it's going to be done. This is the process. It was much more of, well, we kind of had this wind blow this way, so we decided to do that thing that maybe negative overall analytics, would say not to do it, but we kind of did it anyway. And it was like, sometimes I would get a little confused of, people would say, well, this is what happens when you hire an analytics GM. And I'd be like, did we really see that get executed? And I think the answer was no in a lot of cases and probably yes in some. But with Nolan Teasley, he's made it clear that it works this way. The scouts are going to identify players and they're going to run it through analytics. And if you check both of those boxes, then it goes to the coaches. And if there's analytics red flags, then they better figure out why. I think that's good process for everything. And that goes for any guy that they're getting. So, and yeah, like, I don't think, I mean, I've met Nolan. I don't think he's a mysterious guy, but I don't think he's going to be as open with the public and just sort of revealing what they're thinking and doing, which, a lot of GMs aren't. It was nice from a reporter perspective, because I don't think I ever struggled to bring you guys what they were thinking inside the front office. I think in this next run under Nolan Teasley, it will be much less clear what Nolan Teasley is thinking. And that will make for a lot more speculation. And we'll have to beat the bushes. So, JPT's, that was your comment already. Okay, so I think, and I'm sorry if I'm missing comments there. Jay says, been giving us good vibes. What's the most concerning in the regular season? Well, it's probably just the number of players that haven't proven it. When you look at the defensive side, it's across the defensive line. Really liked what I've seen. Doesn't guarantee anything. No guarantees, right? Really liked what I've seen. But Levi Drake, Tyron Dawkins, like these guys haven't played 17 games. And when you get to the secondary and the safety position, if Harrison Smith doesn't come back, Theo Jackson did not have a great 17 games last year. And Jacob Thomas has never played before. And Jay Ward hasn't been a big nickel. Like, that's probably the biggest concern, is that there is a number of those guys who all have to galvanize together when they haven't played together in real games over a long period of time. They've all got experience in the defense, but we haven't seen them over 17 games. I think Denver did have a 4th place schedule, but you know what? You get to the AFC Championship, I don't want to hear it. I don't know what their schedule was like overall. It definitely wasn't as hard as New England, but I mean, the Vikings have been to how many NFC Championship games since I was born? So you get to one of those, I don't want to hear about your schedule. I mean, it doesn't matter at that point. So, all right. Well, really good stuff from you guys, as always. Dylan says Golday and Orange are going to have an earlier and larger impact than Banks this season. I agree with you. Yep, I agree with you. Banks is going to be a more longer-term type of thing, and we'll have to be a little bit patient. Anthony, if they trade McCarthy, there's only Brosmer under contract. It's a long shot that he figures it out, but the chance is more valuable than a day 3 pick. And, you know, the fact that you could throw him in because he knows the offense, it really is kind of a behind the scenes thing and a trust thing. And could you just go get Cooper Rush, who's played a lot of games in the NFL, as your quarterback 3? Because you're really looking to survive when it comes to that. You're just really looking to survive. So, Forrest says, as a Wisconsinite, we better beat Green Bay in the Ravens alternate jersey. Well, when do they? I thought it was against Detroit that they're using those. Isn't it? Which Jay Thomas? Yeah, I know. That's going to be tough. That's going to be an all year type of thing. Oh, could I get allowed in the fullback meeting? That would be amazing. I would love to write a story about that. Like, let me in the fullback meeting just one time. Kay, I love that you show up and you leave comments, but it's just a little much. Just a little much. Like, let's maybe direct it toward like the conversation if we can. Dustin, kind of scared Darisaw won't be good after the knee, like Hawkinson hasn't been the same. Center and running back, big concerns too. This is another one. This is going to be my thing. I'm glad that you brought this up. Like, Purple Insider does not offer guarantees on Christian Darisaw's knee, but all I can tell you is that he doesn't have the big brace on it. He has played every rep in training camp. I honestly don't know. He didn't do the night practice because of the turf. But aside from that, he's been out there all the time. And I've also liked Ryan Vandemark way more than what they've had in the previous years for backup left tackles. But I mean, fair enough from what you're saying. It's just he's looked really good. Center, that I need to see myself. At least we do have a sample size of him performing okay last year. And running back, I think Jordan Mason is the best he's looked in his career in this camp. But if he does get banged up, that's where you're going to be concerned about how this running game can continue to be what they want it to be. Beaver's best friend is Joe Burrow going to make the playoffs of the Super Bowl? Because if not, he's going to want out. Yeah, and it certainly sounded like that the other day. I actually do think that the Cincinnati Bengals will be deep in the playoffs this year. I think Dexter Lawrence is going to be a absolute beast for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think that their offensive line has gotten better over the years. It's just really that defense. And if Burrow can stay healthy, that's what it is. Madsen says, what stage of grief are Vikings fans with McCarthy? It's acceptance. I think that's it. And you're right. It really has kind of been that. Like, grieving the idea of the franchise quarterback has been pretty tough for some people because they were holding out hope. So it's kind of like, what's that one? Is that like, I don't know the 5 stages, but it would be like hopeful would be not, that's probably not one of the 5 stages of grief is hopefulness or whatever. But I think that if there was like the 5 stages of it doesn't work out for a quarterback, that would be one of them, is like holding on to this hope. Maybe the next time, maybe it'll be different the next time. And then there's sort of the anger of, there's no way. It's somebody else's fault. It's the media. It's the coaches. It's whatever else. And then it's probably the acceptance. And you might be at that point. So, Kyle Sloter season. What is Kyle up to these days? Does he making YouTube videos? I knew he was doing that at one point. Those kind of popped up. All right. Well, I think this has been a very productive conversation. It's been great to get all you guys vibes and the end of training camp, man. It's been a journey. And I did want to say to end the show that, I mean, this is just the beginning, of course, for the show. There's going to be more guests. There's going to be more great conversations. There's going to be leading up to the week. I can't wait for that. I'll be at every press conference. There's cut down. There's roster changes, I'm sure, that are going to happen. Surprises that could be on the way. So I'm excited to cover those for sure. But I can't tell you guys how much I am deeply, deeply thankful for all of you who have shown up to every night here, leaving comments, asking questions, being really engaged in the conversation. Sometimes I agree with you, sometimes I disagree with you, but I always love the fact that we're having these discussions and we can dive deeper into stuff. And you guys have made it so much freaking fun for me to cover this training camp and inspiring to live stream more during the season. I mean, I did a good amount last year, but now I want to do even more chats and everything else, because I know you guys are going to be there to have good conversations. So love the fact that this worked out the way that it did. I tried the best I possibly could to present you with everything that's happening and my interpretation of it. And, at least to this point, I feel pretty good about how we did the coverage. I tried to give you lots of different people out there who were also at practice and so forth to get different eyeballs on it and all that stuff. And here we are at the end. So we'll always remember you, 2026 training camp. And now it's time to turn our eyes to 2026 cutdown day and 2026 NFL season. Can't wait. Football. What else could be said?